divine intelligence and help us to make the best use of our own. Amen.
Supervisor Roble.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll move for the approval of this morning's agenda.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak on anything on the agenda this morning? Now is your chance to talk. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak? Yes, state your name and address.
Is this on? I don't know, but just a few quick comments. I sent most of all of you either an email or a letter pertaining to some items of concern on the airport budget and the airport in general. And I would like to just comment on a few of those. I'll be quick. I know that the air traffic control tower needs new carpeting, and the carpet has to be a special carpet that doesn't create static electricity. But $12,000? Wow. Many years ago, this board debated the perimeter road that went around the airport. And it was mentioned many times by a bunch of supervisors, who's going to maintain that road? Well, for those that were here, remember the FAA person that basically threatened this board that if you don't do this project? Well, we did it. And today, we know who's going to maintain the road. We have $117,000 to maintain the perimeter road. I don't see anybody from the state or the FAA here to help us, so I guess we're stuck with it. The airport income has been a topic I addressed this board many times at budget. And last night I listened to all of you on the radio, and I heard Chuck many times say, the budget is just a guess. I don't know how many people are going to retire. I don't know how much money this is going to. And I agree with that. I understand. This is a wag, a guess. But it's sad to me as a taxpayer that we don't use an educated guess. Every year we overinflate the income of the airport. We never attain that value. And this year again, we inflated it by about $56,000, $60,000. I would like to have it explained, because I don't see any new businesses, new buildings, new tenants. How we're going to exceed or meet that value or even come close. But last and very important, I heard there's going to be an amendment, and I was surprised it wasn't put on the agenda for the public to see, but it's pertaining to the airport terminal building. I have a transcript in my hand that you can all read from an April public hearing about airport future projects. Many of you, the Aviation Committee, Bob Warnke, Mary Beth, Tom Konoski, Harold, Bill Rowe, were in attendance, along with a lot of very important tenants of the airport, the president of the EAA, many vice presidents of the EAA, Sonic Aircraft, Fox Valley Tech, to name a few. Big aircraft owners, small aircraft owners, all spoke at this public hearing. When it came to the terminal project, the stakeholders of the airport unanimously challenged the wisdom of the terminal project for $5.5, $6 million, whatever it is. There are options out there. This needs to be redone, or as when we were kids, let's redo it. If you're digging a hole that nobody wants or in the wrong spot, and we're only about 5% into this. We spent about 5% of that $5.5 million already. But if we're only 5% into this hole, let's stop and save the other 95% for something people want and it would be useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to address the board on anything on the budget today? Is there anybody else that would like to, yes, come up and state your name and.
Am I allowed to talk about the dog park?
Got to lift it
Am I
up.
allowed to talk about the dog park?
Lift it up closer to you.
Is this good?
That's good.
Okay, I'm not a good public speaker, so.
That's good.
My name is Nikki Shaganis. I live at 937 Adams Street in Neenah, and I am for the dog park. I think that Neenah is very proactive on all the approaches it takes on dogs, allowing them on pathways in parks, at the farmer's market, and I think having the dog park would be a great addition to that for the community, especially for people that have rentals and can't let their dogs run free in their backyard. I can, but a lot of people can't. A lot of people aren't very mobile. I can walk and bike with my dogs, but I know a lot of people can't, so that would be a benefit for them to get their dogs out to exercise. And I think it's good socialization for the dogs. I think well-socialized dogs are better than dogs that are just cooped up and kept inside in kennels and stuff like that. So I don't know where the location is going to be. I don't really have a preference on where it is. So, but I am in favor of it, as are a lot of my friends, family. I'm a pet sitter. That's my business. I know a lot of my clients are also for it.
Okay.
So.
Would you state your name again? I didn't get
It's
it.
Nikki Shaganis. Spelling is Chaganos.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to address the board on the budget? Is there anybody else that would like to address the board? That portion of the meeting will be closed. Reports from committees, commissions, and boards. Or no, communications from the clerk, I'm sorry. She has nothing. Reports from committees, commissions, and boards. My report only is that Supervisor Harp and Supervisor Long are asked to be excused from the meeting today. So at this time, I would like to ask County Executive Mark Harris to come up and finish his presentation of the budget.
I think the next section of the budget is facilities and property management, and their chart of employees is on page 192. The facilities and property management department is budgeted for 39 full-time employees, the same as the current year. And the chart of significant changes is on page 193. Mike Elder's in the back of the room and can take any questions that you have.
Supervisor,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, there is a provision in the five-year capital plan for 2018 to replace the windows in the courthouse. And initially, I think there's a little bit excess of $1 million that was appropriated for that project. The objectives and goals of the facilities department does not include that objective to replace the windows. There has also been a presentation to the board that because of the historic status of the building, that the cost to replace windows will exceed $3 million. Could the Director of Facilities give us a status on that situation and how he intends to go forward? I would suggest that with the high price of maintaining the historic status of this building, it's probably more important to the people of Winnebago County to delist that status and save several millions of dollars on the continuous upgrading and remodeling of this facility. Could you explain to the board what's the situation with the windows?
The situation with the windows are, we're currently in negotiations with the State Historic Society. They are the agents for the National Federal Park Service, which is the overseer of the historic buildings. They also agreed that $3.4 million was a little bit more than what they had expected. But right now, the negotiations are simply beginning and working with them to see if we can go back with a different style of windows that would mimic what we've got. There's no real determination on that yet. It's an ongoing process. The fact that it's not in the goals was just an oversight on my part. The option of delisting a building is not really an option. I explored that with the state, and the only way that a building can be delisted is if it has lost its historic significance, and that would be by unauthorized basic destruction of the historic features. We haven't done that, so it's not really an option of ours. For us to go and just do something on our own and not conform to the guidance and the direction of the Historic Society, they have the options of filing an injunction and stopping the project. And if that doesn't work, then they have the options of fining us. So once you list a building, it's basically listed forever.
There ought to be a law.
Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike, I have about a half a dozen questions. So the first one, there was on page 196. You talk of the sale of scrap. Do we run a scrap drive, or could we? Is this metal, paper, or what is it?
No, this is metal products that when we replace equipment, like if we replace a motor, instead of throwing it in the garbage, we take it to a scrap yard and get scrap value for it.
So is that possible that we could have a scrap drive? Would it bring in any money? I don't know.
It probably would not cover the cost of us trying to do a scrap drive.
Okay, all right. Page 197, and I appreciate you're holding the line on comp time, but why the 41.36% increase in overtime?
Because we have had an experience with snow and additional repairs as we've been going through the different life cycles of the buildings. So the buildings are getting older, and what we're noticing is we're getting a lot more calls for after-hours work.
Okay. On that same page, there's a 300% increase in lodging for travel and so on, yet registration and mileage are staying steady. How are you needing more lodging if you're not increasing any registrations or mileage?
Because we're having, the classes that we're taking now are now mostly located out of town.
But you don't have to register for them or drive to them?
We do, but that, we've had to do that in the past, but now it's working that we have to spend a night someplace.
Okay. Page 198, a 200% increase in postage and box rental.
We've just been mailing more information out to the committee and vendors and things like that.
Okay. A 2,300% increase in shop supplies. What shop supplies are we getting?
Shop supplies are batteries, rigs, and a lot of the saw blades, drill bits, and things that we used to get, we charged under small equipment, which is really not appropriate for small equipment. It should be covered under shop supplies.
Yeah, and small equipment has gone down, I see. Okay. Page 199, well, there is an increase in small equipment technology. Small equipment technology, a 481% increase in small equipment technology.
We're looking at trying to get more workstations available for our staff to work on the computer network. A lot of our equipment's now network-based. So instead of having them have to come back to the shop to do their work on the computer, we need to put a computer terminal into our work areas in the different buildings.
Okay, thank you.
If I could just make a comment, when we focus on the large percentage increases, I mean, those legitimately should draw your attention, and I think it's good that those are being questioned. But because we're on television, the television audience may think there's an enormous increase in that category when they just hear the percentage, and of course, they don't have the benefit of seeing the dollar amounts. So for instance, right, but for instance, the lodging is up 300% to $800. You know, so it's still a few hotel room nights. And I'm just suggesting that when we mention a very large percentage increase, that we probably should tell them the dollars as well, so that anyone that's watching the meeting on television would then have some sense of perspective. I mean, a very, very small item could go up a very large percentage and be a very small dollar amount, and that's not going to be obvious to the audience at home.
Just wait a minute. Okay. Well, go ahead. Go ahead.
My concern was that lodging was going up, but registrations and an auto allowance were staying the same. I wasn't sure why. That was, the question was more, why do you need more lodging if you're not doing any more registrations or travel to go to these places?
A very good question, but,
Okay.
and the difference was explained that
Yeah.
what they anticipate is where there'll be overnight stays, when in the past, most of the training has been within commuting distance.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Supervisor Rule.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have a question. I just have some additional information on the question on windows. As Supervisor Eisen so aptly put it, this board passed a resolution for a little over $1 million worth of new windows, and when the bids came back in, it was a little over $3 million. That was sent back to facilities, and if you're not aware, I'd like to make you aware that the Facilities Committee voted unanimously 5-0 to reject that. Thank you.
Supervisor Shorsey.
Mr. Chairman, a question for Mark. Because this is my first time through the budget, please be patient with me. But is there a process in place so if overtime grows to a point where it is consistently near or over a cost of a new employee that you're evaluating that?
That is part of the budget process as we look at overtime and question if the staffing levels are appropriate, if that's causing the overtime. Oftentimes, though, the overtime has to do with people being called in outside their normal shift.
Right.
And anyone involved with snow removal, that can be a factor.
And then my other question, kind of connected with that, is before we add FTEs, is there a process review to see if there can be more efficiencies or things changed before an FTE is added?
Yes, I mean, we actually try very hard not to increase the total staffing, and we're actually still below where we were 12 years ago. But we're creeping back towards that level, and in most cases where we've added staff, especially in the human service area, it's where we felt we could bring services back in-house and do it better and cheaper than the contracted services. And much of our budget is payroll and benefits, but in the human service area in particular, there's a lot of contracted services.
And my question was more in general, general practice rather than just the maintenance areas.
Yeah, just to real quick, in our process, the departments are given targets for their budgets. They then come into a meeting with Chuck Orenstein, who's the financial director, and myself, typically their committee chair and the department head, and then we go over their budgets item by item. And from those meetings, we construct this budget book.
Right. Thank you.
Supervisor Furry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Elders, excuse me. Have a question in regard to the line items on page 194. During my tenure on the Facilities Committee, which was for several years, the utility costs to that department always fluctuated, but I believe they were somewhat leveling off. That was my last understanding. I'm a little surprised to see the increases you have listed here, and I'll start with the first three: heat, power and light, and water. What do you use to determine that increase? Because I'm aware we're seeing increases in gasoline prices, but not necessarily utility costs.
Utility costs have been going up. I think WPS went for a 7.1% increase this last time. The water bills have gone up, I think, 18% this year.
That would be a city,
That's a city.
Right.
The water rates go up, plus the stormwater utility rates go up. And basically what we've got is inflational creep in the rates, and then inflational creep in usage.
thank you for that. Let's go to number 4, refuge collection. The increase is due to the need to contract out service that was previously provided by the Solid Waste Management Department. What happened there?
Well, that, that cost was, if you look at it, that cost was offset by a decrease in interfund costs. Solid Waste is now getting out of the business of collecting our trash for the county.
So who's picking that up?
My budget is. It's just going from one, if you look further down, the interfund, you'll see there's a decrease of $21,180, and it's being shifted into the other refuse collection account where I have to contract out for the services, and our estimate is about $20,000.
Who are you contracting with?
That will be going out for bid. Right now, we've used vans.
Perhaps the county executive could tell me, why isn't the Solid Waste Management Department providing that service anymore?
It was their determination that that wasn't an efficient part of their operation. And as you know now, we don't landfill here anymore, that we're just a way station. But, so they're changing their operation substantially, or have been for a couple of years now. But we're completely done landfilling at this location. And I think that's probably opened up the possibility for additional changes in our operations.
But the change is somewhat negative to the county as I'm reading this here. I mean, they pick it up and they're still going to load it here and transfer it up there, so.
Well, you know,
What's the efficiency of that is what I'm asking.
yeah, you know, the solid waste will be here at their budget's at the end of this process. They're number 28. And
Okay.
probably they can answer that better than I can.
I'll address that then, sir. Thank you.
Supervisor Norton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The equipment, maintenance equipment account on page 199, the increase is 49.97, almost 50%. The budget request, which I think comes from the department head, is $314,500. You have down $429,500, which is a hefty $115,000. What justifies that? And my question is, the explanation is it's small planned. I mean, what happens during the year? I guess if he doesn't spend it, he returns it, but I guess I would like to know why you have in $429,500 and his request was $314,500.
I remember half of that, and I'll tell you what I remember, and then we'll let Mike finish that. But basically, he came in with a list of things he felt he had to have, things he thought were in our long-term interest to have, and some additional items are kind of on a wish list. And we went through that list and determined there were items in there that were in our interest for him to go ahead and buy in the long run. So we took he was trying to meet his budget target, so he was pushing off some things that he thought would better be included in the budget. But in our meeting, he presented those to us to see what our thoughts were, and we added them back in. And I think Mike can probably give you the specifics of what those items were.
I can, and it was basically things to either increase our energy efficiency or to get rid of some of the deferred maintenance that has built up over the years. One of the ones is, for energy efficiency, we'd want to put frequency drives on the motors of our air handling units at the Oshkosh Human Services Building. That's about $20,000. And what that does is it allows us to regulate the speed of the air coming out of the air handlers. If you look at your air handlers like your home furnace, it runs at one speed. During the night, when we don't have the number of people in the building that requires that amount of air change in the building, we can run them at a slower speed and save energy. The maintenance shop doesn't have an emergency generator. That's the only place I think we have of a county building now that no longer has an emergency generator. That helps us when we have a power outage, and it will help us to keep from freezing the buildings over the winters if we have a power outage. It also allows us to keep operations up and running when we don't have the power. We want to use our absorption chiller that we put in at the jail. When we get to a really hot time of the year, the absorption chiller doesn't have the capacity to maintain the air conditioning, and we go back to the more expensive centrifugal chillers in the jail. But what we can do, we found a way that we can reroute the piping and pre-chill the water using our absorption chiller, which will reduce the load on the more expensive centrifugal chillers. You know, and that's $45,000. We have some things to help us keep our air conditioning or our filters and stuff clean better, and we can put some intake screens on our intakes to the buildings. You all probably have seen cottonwoods around. You don't have, on your homes, you don't have the air intakes that we have. We have like an air intake on this building that sucks in 90,000 cubic feet per minute. That cleans a lot of cottonwood seeds out of the air. We need to repair and maintain the fire caulking in the R and King building. We're trying to take each building, one building a year, and go through and verify that all the fire caulking is done, repair what's damaged, install fire caulking where it's been missed. We've got just some mundane things like going around and changing the toilets and the urinals from manual flushes to automated flushes, and going from some manual faucets to automated faucets. So those are the kind of things that have made up that $100 and some thousand that would have been in my budget had I had a greater cap.
So I guess maybe this question is for you, Mark. I mean, in future years, that level, 429,500, will not be maintained. It would be, I mean, there have been small increases the last few years, but not 50%. I mean, are you gonna try to maintain that high level of equipment repairs? Or, that's my question is, because I don't think that can be sustained. And my question would be, could some of these projects that we're doing this year could not be put off a year or two and save the taxpayers even more money year by year?
Well, that's exactly the problem with facilities management, is that most projects can be put off a year or two with only a nominal impact, but the cumulative effect of putting off maintenance on older buildings is that, you know, it costs you a lot to keep them well maintained. It costs you even more if you don't. So I think we'll review, just like we did this year, all the projects, and Mike compiles this list, and where we think it's in the term interest of the taxpayer to take care of them now rather than deferring it, we'll probably do that. I don't think you ever really save money in total by deferring. I think you can put off an expense when you can't afford it in a given year, but it probably costs you more in the long run.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe just to add to that answer a little bit, as a member of the Facilities and Property Management Committee, we had decided to ask Mike to have these projects added to his budget simply to take care of the buildings. I think it's absolutely critical and it should be a budgetary priority of the county to maintain the infrastructure, the buildings that exist. One of the things that I hear when I go to other committee meetings is, why did we not take better care of this building? Why did we not do this? So this was really an effort by the committee to encourage Mike to ask to get those pulled up and put in this budget as a priority. I did have a question for Mike though, and that is, and forgive me if it was already asked, Supervisor Sengstock asked a question, I think it was Supervisor Sengstock asked a question last night about the ergonomic desks, or maybe it was Mr. Norton. And Mike, maybe we should ask you while you're here, what is the protocol for individual departments to order such desks? I think that they were for Mr. Ornstein's department in finance. He put 2 desks that can be raised and lowered into his budget. Is that something that individual departments should do, or is that something that should be run through facilities? Thank you.
Furniture purchasing has usually been the responsibility of the individual departments. We've never really gotten into any of the necessary, routine furniture purchases. For a lot of the desks where it's something that's maybe considered an ADA accommodation, that's usually worked on jointly between my department, the home department, and human resources to make sure that we accommodate the person the best they can. So with getting the very desks, that is something that's usually the purview of the department.
Just to follow up on that, is it ever feasible to do that through one source to get a better price on those rather than through individual departments? That was my only other thought as a follow-up in regards to that question last night.
Usually, we go out and at the beginning of the year, purchasing will contact vendors and get pricing for furniture from major manufacturers, and we get a standard discount for it, and it's usually a pretty reasonable discount. And then each department is required to buy furniture through the approved vendors.
Thank you.
Page 204, District Attorney.
The district attorney is budgeted in 2018 for 18 full-time employees, the same as 2017. And I'll just mention that the district attorney and the assistant DAs are employees of the state, but all the other employees in that department are paid for by the county. Oh, 208 is where the chart of personnel is. And then the list of significant changes on page 209.
Supervisor Powers.
Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at page 209. There's a $25,000 increase that's called the domestic violence fees. Are we charging victims some sort of fee? Or what does that fee mean?
That's a fee charged to offenders who are diverted.
It's going where it's being charged to the offenders?
Correct.
Okay. And when we have a situation with domestic violence or I suppose any kind of sexual assault, do we have any female officers who go out, or do we only have men?
That would be a departmental question. I don't know.
You don't know? Okay.
I'm sure that we have both, but I don't know what each department's makeup is.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Farley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I recall during the state budget process, there were several requests from different counties for additional assistant DAs. Did this county make that request?
We did. We requested, I believe, 3 positions.
And what was the results of that
The
request?
state added none again,
Zero.
0.
Did they add some and to where?
I think the last time they added positions, they converted several part-time positions around the state to full-time equivalent positions. And before that, I believe it was probably about 8 to 10 years ago, they added 2 prosecutors in Kenosha County.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the county.
Kenosha County?
Kenosha County? Did they add any to Milwaukee County?
I don't think so. I think Milwaukee County has, Milwaukee County is unique because of their population. They qualify for a lot of federal funds. So Milwaukee has, I would guess, somewhere between 20 and 40 positions that are funded through grants that come through the federal government. So
Would
there
it be
might
fair
some,
to say that you're understaffed?
I think that we have been for a while now, and offices throughout the state are. So yeah, it requires us to do some setting of priorities every year.
And the sole remedy for that lies with the state of Wisconsin, not Winnebago County?
That's correct.
So Winnebago County couldn't really add another person by board direction without state approval.
That's correct. It would need state approval, and some counties have added county-funded prosecutor positions in recent years. So I guess technically there have been DA's offices who have seen increases, and we have had those discussions here in Winnebago County. One of the concerns, of course, is if the county funds those prosecutorial positions, then that will relieve the state of the burden of funding those positions in the future. So it's been a delicate balance and kind of a difficult situation to navigate. The county certainly could fund the positions, but the concern is then the county would be stuck funding the positions.
Sure, they don't want to assume that liability in essence is what's going on here. But we still have the question, which is not resolved, is that you're understaffed. How many hours a week do your deputies work on average?
They're all salaried, so it depends on the week, of course. This week we had an incident which kept several people busy throughout the night. So I don't think it's so much a matter of that. It really comes down to what types of things can the district attorney's office do. We had talked about Kenosha briefly, for example. Kenosha has 167,000 people. We have 168,000. They have 16 prosecutors. We have 10. So Kenosha can provide more services on various levels, to businesses for retail thefts, things of that sort. And we have to focus more on some of the priorities in our area. So we're more limited in the types of things that we can do.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The sheriff has listed a 2018 goal and objective on page 236, number 6, to form a jail expansion team to study the space, staffing, programming needs for the anticipated jail expansion project. In 2011, a jail needs analysis projected a need for 451 beds by 2015 and increasing. Today, the average daily population averages 329, which is up from 2016, with our jail capacity at 355. At a recent Safe Streets Committee meeting, I suggested that the committee request a grant from the county board to strengthen intradepartmental efforts to divert and treat potential inmates. The efforts to treat alternatives to incarceration and diversion from prosecution has effectively kept our average daily population down. And with some additional investment in these efforts, we can help to avert a $15 million jail expansion. Now, the Safe Streets Committee declined to be the recipient of a grant, preferring that the DA, Sheriff, Human Services handle the money. Could some part of a grant bolster DA diversion efforts to mitigate potential jail expansion? And from the top of your head, how much money would be needed to make a visible impact? Because we're looking at, say, a joint investment of a $150,000 grant to the DA, sheriff, and Human Services is 1% of the $15 million that it would cost to expand that jail. Is it feasible for the DA, working intradepartmentally, to step up their efforts at diversion and deferral of prosecution?
It certainly is. And just last week, we launched a new diversion program in conjunction with the Benedict Center in Milwaukee, AIM in Outagamie County, and Reach Counseling in Neenah to divert individuals engaged in prostitution-related offenses. We're also working with Forward Wisconsin, Legal Aid, law enforcement, and various other entities to work with people with revoked driver's licenses to help them get driver's licenses become valid. I think one of the things that would probably help is providing some assistance to the sheriff's department so that they could identify who's in the jail. I think there's some limitations on the computer programming that they have. If we could identify who's in the jail for what, that would help us target diversion programs towards that population need. And then beyond that, I think looking at probation and parole numbers.
Now also, in the sheriff's goals and objectives, on page 236, item number 2, he has a goal and objective to partner with the Human Services to create a liaison position that coordinates and ensures Sheriff Office TAD programming effectiveness. That's treatment, alternative from incarcerations, and diversion from prosecution. So there is a lofty goal, both at the same time, the downside, trying to understand whether there's a need to expand the jail, but at the same time, trying to implement ways to avoid that expansion. Would you be able to put a dollar number on what could be helpful for the 3 departments to give you that extra edge? Because it wasn't in the realm of the Safe Streets Initiative Committee, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, as it's designated, to handle that money.
I think that position with DHS will be helpful. We're aware that that position is likely coming, and we're looking forward to having that liaison person to try to help us do those things. I still think at the end of the day, we need to know who's sitting in the jail, what they're sitting there for, how long they're sitting there, and then we can develop strategies to address those particular populations.
I think that's probably something that we had identified in the jails analysis back in 211, and that's also something that would be identified in the update of the effort to study the space staffing and programming. So I think the objectives of the sheriff coordinate with your same outlook, but
I think that's right.
The crux of the matter would be to coordinating these and use them beneficially so that we can avoid that $15 million burden to the citizens of Winnebago County, and we can at the same time promote public safety.
Yeah, I think we'd be able to accomplish that.
Supervisor Shorsey.
Just a question about staffing again. And do you feel that we've maximized the use of paralegals in the DA's office? And what has been the state's position on funding that kind of assistance to help the attorneys, do what they absolutely need to do.
Yeah, one of the things that we've done here is we had 7 positions. We converted 4 of them to paralegals, which enables them to do more legal work than legal secretaries. And that's relieved quite a bit of the burden. Also at the county level, we've added an entire alternative and diversion unit, which diverts hundreds of cases per year. There is an attorney that works, whoops, there goes my pen. There is an attorney who works for the county who is responsible, thank you, for all of that programming. And that, I think, does directly impact the jail population because we focus on low-level offenders to keep them out of the jail. And so I think the county's doing everything that they can. We have a very sophisticated alternative and diversion program, and in fact, we've trained most of the other DA's offices in the state in what we're doing and demonstrated our programming for them. And I've even spoken about it out of state several times now. So I think we've maximized what we can do at the county level.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Christian, maybe you could tell them a little bit about ADA pay. I know we're a little bit stabler now than we had been in the past, but there's issues with assistant DA pay that it caused those positions to have a very high level of turnover in past years, although it has been more stable recently.
That's correct. For quite a while, we were turning over a statistical 100% of our ADAs every 5.5 years, which is very difficult to work with because it takes about 3 to 5 years to get them up to speed. And we're still struggling with pay progression, but we did see 2-3% pay raises, followed by a 0%, then a 2%, and now we're back on track for 2-3% in the current state budget. That is helping us retain our attorneys longer, and just by keeping attorneys and having experienced staff, it does cut down on the amount of time that it takes to process cases.
Supervisor Wojciechowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Another question pertaining to staffing, and you were talking about prioritizing. Has this contributed to people maybe in jail or people waiting for representation to wait longer due to staffing and?
That's an interesting question. We focus our efforts first on the people who are incarcerated. And there was a story several months ago about case backlogs in DA's offices. And at that time, one of our regional offices had a backlog of about 4,000 cases. Ours was 35. So I think that we're managing to hit those in an appropriate order. So I think we're getting things handled. Thank you.
.216, Clerk of Courts.
On page 221 is the chart of employees for the clerk of the courts. They're budgeted for 43 full-time and 2 part-time employees for 2018, the same as 2017. And the summary of significant changes is on page 222. Melissa is in the back of the room and can take any questions that you have. Not Melissa.
213, the sheriff.
I think the chart of employees for the
Oh,
sheriff.
I'm sorry, it was 232.
Yeah. The chart of employees is on page 237. The sheriff department is budgeted for 198 full-time employees and 10 part-time employees for 2018. That's the same as 2017. This very important department performs an essential function. It is the largest consumer of levy in the county. And the chart of significant changes is on page 238.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for the sheriff, and question would be, Your Honor, looking at the goals and objectives for the department, item number 2, partnering with Human Services to create a liaison position that coordinates and ensures the sheriff office's TAD programming effectiveness. Is this funded? And if it is funded, where is the funding in the budget?
It is on Human Services Table of Organization, so they would budget for the position. They would supervise the position. We would, the position would be work from our facility. They would work with individuals who are on our 24/7 program to make sure that they have additional services. We do the accountability piece with alcohol and drugs, making sure or trying to make sure that they're compliant and that they're sober. But there is no counseling piece to it. There is no job search piece to it. There is no attempting to get a license if they don't have one. Those are all the things that help people be successful and maintain sobriety when they're off those programs. They would also work with the inmates who are about to be released in the same fashion. Do they need to go to inpatient drug rehabilitation? Do they need outpatient services? And those are all really controlled by social services. And we're not experts in that area, and that's what that position would be responsible for, and it would be on their table of organization. We did apply for a grant to cover the majority of that position. We are still waiting to hear whether or not we have been awarded that grant.
Are you aware of the specific location in the Human Services budget where that would be accounted for?
I don't know the paragraph and line number. I do not know.
And a second question while I have the floor. At the most recent Safe Streets Committee meeting, there was an interchange in discussion to my suggestion of a grant for the Safe Streets Initiative to receive. And a question was presented in conversation to you by the judge, Judge Wolt, to the effect that you process individuals into the jail, but at the same time, you're not able to complete a complete transaction because they'd have to go to the other side of the registration process, and you didn't have the sufficient manpower to complete this, which might add an extra element of fine-tuning their assessment as to whether they can be diverted from jail situation. Is there a sum of money that would enable your staff to fine-tune this effort so that at the same time that we're studying the space needs going forward, we're also doing everything we can to divert individuals from adding to that number?
Sure, and I think that's part of the whole jail overcrowding question. The sheriff's office really does not control the numbers in our facility. They're controlled by law enforcement making arrests, whether it could be the sheriff's office certainly, but making arrests, and then the individual may be placed in jail. They go in front of the district attorney, puts together a case, and then the judge decides really the placement. Is there a bond? And if there's a jail sentence, how long is it, et cetera. So that's where the diversion programs come in, really at the point of the district attorney receiving the case or the judge deciding that someone might be more suitable for drug court, let's say. But we have diversion programs for drugs, for alcohol, for domestic abuse, human trafficking, whether or not the prostitute or the one that's seeking the services. So both of them have diversion programs. We have child parenting classes and counseling. We have anger counseling. We have all kinds of things that are available to our offenders. But they have to want to get better, and therein lies the problem. So we have people that have been on our 24/7 program for a number of weeks, months, and they will reuse in the case of drugs and or alcohol, and we try to work with them on bringing them back into our facility for a short time and doing that carrot and stick kind of method. With that new position that we just talked about, there's more that goes to it. Now there'll be some additional counseling, and there'll be some things that will, instead of them going right out to the same environment that they left, hopefully they're going to a better environment. They're going to a job, they're going to counseling on a regular basis. And I know we've helped a lot of people, but I think we're going to help a whole lot more with this position. Will that decrease our numbers where we never have to build onto our facility? I don't think so. A lot of the numbers are probation and parole holds, which we have no control over. Probation agents will put people in on probation holds, and they can be there for up to 60 days while they await revocation and go into prison, and sometimes even longer. So there's a lot that goes into the jail count. It's not as simple as creating 1 or 2 additional diversion programs and you've solved the problem. It's complex.
Thank you for your explanation, sir.
Supervisor Wojciechowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to start off by saying thank you, Sheriff Motz, for you and your department, all the work you do. I'm looking at the 2016 report that is on the website, just detailing different statistics, and kind of wanted to, if you know off the top of your head, for the average daily population and admissions, have those gone up since 2016, do you know?
Yes, we have seen a market increase in, it started really, to the best of my recollection, about 8 or 9 months ago. We saw about a 40 inmate increase, 40 to 60. That's substantial. That should have taken a long period of time to really happen. And so what we did was we looked at our highest day in 2017 was June 22nd in 2017. We looked at that day and we broke down why all those inmates were in jail, what they were there for. Drugs, alcohol, probation holds, whatever it might be. Then we took a look, we went back to June 22nd of 2016 when the count was about 60 inmates less. And we looked at why we had inmates in our facility. It was exactly the same reasons, it's just more people doing the same things. So what does that tell us? It probably tells us that our drugs problem is getting worse, not better. And we need to address it not just on the incarceration end and on the diversion end, but also on the education end, which is what we're trying to do with the pillar approach to the heroin issue that we have. But, you know, drugs are a very powerful thing that we have to deal with, not just in this community, not just this county, but, you know, throughout our United States.
And then just kind of on the jail expansion, number 6 goal, could you just give some more information on that? I wasn't familiar with the jail expansion project and kind of the reasoning behind it, and if you anticipated us actually having to go forward with doing that.
Yes, as Supervisor Eisen had stated, we were projected to be in the 440, 450 jail population area actually prior to this time. And our counts now are about 330. We're averaging somewhere in that area, with the highest day, I believe, at 353. Our maximum is 355. But if we can keep it about 320, that's our functional capacity, meaning that we can put the right inmate in the right type of cell. And we can have those inmates that are minimum in our direct supervision areas, and those that are maximum are in your traditional type cells. So what we would look at with the expansion is where do we anticipate being in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10, 15, looking down the road. And then we would want to know what type of cell do we need. Do we need more direct supervision, where we can put 70 inmates in one large room? Or do we need more individual cells? I could tell you one of the areas that we're very concerned with is our mental health areas. We have more mentally ill inmates than we've ever seen before. The number of psychotropic medications that are being given to our inmates are at an all-time high. And it's not, these are people with really some long-term mental health issues. Some of the inmates that we are receiving come from Winnebago Mental Health, and they have clinically been diagnosed as having mental health issues, and they're extremely labor intensive. They'll commit a crime while they're at Winnebago Mental Health, and then they come to our facility. They're extremely labor intensive, and we need to look at having an area just for that type of inmate.
Thank you.
Supervisor Singstep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really, this previous supervisor beat me to the punch, really. But I do have a question regarding that line 6. It says form a jail expansion team. Would you please give me the detail on that?
Sure. Currently, we're really in the early stages of that, but we would use more than just personnel from inside our facility. We would look to the district attorney's office. We would look to social services. We would look to other areas of expertise, and what type of cells do we need, how large do we need to build, or how many and what types of jail space do we need. We would ask for another study done by probably Kimmy, because they're very aware of our facility, and they've done a study in the past, and they would give us an idea of what we need for jail space. The current jail can handle, its infrastructure can handle 800 beds. We're currently at 355, so our laundry area, our kitchen, and all of that is designed to handle up to 800. You know, certainly, we don't need that type of expansion, but I do believe that in our very, very near future, we will need to expand.
Thank you.
If the chairman will permit me, I would like to comment that, we're only at about 5 or 6% of our debt limit. So with the board's approval, there's no problem bonding to build a new jail pod. The problem for our budgets are the operating expenses, where we're limited to net new construction. And the jail is one of our 24/7 operations. You have to staff that for all shifts, all days of the week, year-round. So the problem with the jail expansion is meeting those operational expenses when we're subject to such tight limits on operation. But the alternative is having people out in the public that should be incarcerated, and I think that's a worst option. So it's a difficult situation the board's going to have to face in the near future.
Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple questions for the sheriff. I asked the DA about female officers responding to domestic violence and situations. Do you have female officers?
We do.
And you send them when there's a case of domestic violence or sexual assault on a female?
Well, if it's a sensitive type crime, now not all domestics are would meet that real sensitive type situation, but if it is, yes, we would send a female. We have officers that are specifically trained to deal with children and to interview children, so we make sure that they're not traumatized anymore by what we're going to do.
Okay. Thank you. On page 236, one of your goals is to implement a jail body-worn camera program better to capture deputy and inmate interactions. Are patrol officers also wearing body cams?
They are.
All of them?
Yes.
Okay. And are we, along with the sheriff's office, are we also covering the jail improvement fund part? Okay. I noticed there was this is also for the sheriff. There was a 56% increase, a $1,400 increase in medical supplies. And does that reflect the opioid events?
Yes, that's for Narcan.
Okay, and the question I have for the jail, what is a minor wash machine?
It's a very large industrial machine that we need to replace. So, picture something that would be in a very large hotel.
In a
We need to
Very
replace.
large hotel?
Yeah, like it's a very, very large wash machine. We need to.
Washing machine?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
And
you.
we're also, we'll be replacing our dishwasher as well, but we were able to utilize a grant for a lot of that purchase.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Furry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, first of all, I want to clarify or qualify my question. On page 238, under expenses changes, impact on the levy, you show a $597,000 increase in salary and benefits. Is that correct?
That's correct.
However, when I go to page 237 and I look at your levy increase, it's $521,000. So that's a $75,000 difference. That means you either received more income outside of the levy, or you found areas within your budget to make up that 75, in other words, cut it. Is that the case?
Yes, both.
Well-
We received some revenue and we made some cuts in different areas.
Well, I say to you, sir, well done. That's a good job. Thank you.
Supervisor Gabbard.
I have several questions. Some have been answered, and Mark hit on one of them, but it's concerning to me, so I'll read what I have. Do you have a current work release population as of today, yesterday? Second question, mental health crime committed out at Winnebago. Answer the question to me, if it's committed out there and they're already a resident out there, why wouldn't they go to one of the facilities out there if they committed a crime rather than to the jail? I understand the addition process for the jail. I was wondering if you could tell me what you think you would need in beds. And yes, you can bond for that, but that's still taxpayers' dollars. $15 million to me is a lot of money as a taxpayer. But I've highlighted how much staff is it going to take, because as Mark hit on, that's an operating expense. So I'm wondering what you think you would need in extra staff. And then my other, my other question. What is the longest time right now that an inmate is staying at Winnebago? Is it is the most that someone could stay 5 years, 10 years, 2 years? I guess that's it.
Okay, I'll start off from the back because I remember those questions. 1 year, a person could be sentenced to the jail, although we do have people that spend a little bit more time than that if they're awaiting sentencing or the judicial process. In the case of a first-degree intentional homicide case, sometimes they go beyond a year to be adjudicated. Our average length of stay is 19 days. That's how long the average inmate stays. As far as Winnebago mental health is concerned, why we get those inmates? Because they committed a crime in Winnebago County. Now, does it make sense that you're taking a patient who has been deemed mentally incompetent from that facility into our jail? Absolutely not. I don't want to take them, but I have to. And they are very labor intensive. And we try as best we can to deal with their mental health issues and at the same token, the safety and security of our facility.
How long would a person stay with you under that? Could that be a long time?
Could be. Just had one that was 9 months before they were sentenced to prison. So if they're deemed incompetent under one, you're not deemed incompetent all the time. It's you commit a crime, you're deemed incompetent, and you commit another crime, there's a competency hearing that occurs for that as well. So we have that process to go through.
Do you ever have someone that goes back to, and I don't want to, Kempster, Gordon, they come out of Winnebago Mental Health, they come to you, they're sentenced, they go back out there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The other question was the number of personnel that would be needed. It really depends upon how many beds we add and what kind of beds. A open bay type system, we can deal with 70 inmates with one deputy. If we need bed space that's more traditional, where it's, has a barred door, traditional like you would think of a jail. Those are more labor intensive. So I wish I could answer the question, but I don't know, and that'll be part of the study.
So as of today, you don't know what kind of addition you need yet?
That really is up to the, whoever does our study. I mean, they're really going to, I trust that they are going to be able to give us a better idea. We certainly are going to make available all the staff and all the information to them, but that's their forte, and they designed the current facility that we have. And I think if we could do it over, we would probably change a little bit of what we did to the current facility based on the type of inmate we have today. But back when we built the jail, it was perfect. It was what we needed. But things are changing, and mental health is one of those things.
If I can inject something too, just because Winnebago Mental Health has come up several times, and they've been in the news lately. They are not part of the county.
Right.
They're a part of the state. But the county can be billed for someone placed in Winnebago Mental Health. And for instance, one of our police agencies within the county could pick somebody up and take them into Winnebago Mental Health, and we would then be charged under some circumstances for that. And you can explore that with the Human Service Director when he comes in. Most stays there are relatively short. Often they're getting people stabilized on their medications. But if someone were to stay at Winnebago Mental Health for a year and it was being billed to the county, that would cost us close to $1 million. So while you don't really want mentally ill people in the jail, it's not the appropriate setting for them, we also can't afford to be paying for a lot of people in Winnebago Mental Health. So it's a real dilemma.
Yeah, that's what I was dealing with, and I don't believe a mentally ill person should be in a jail, but I do understand that it costs a lot of money out there. Work release population?
Oh yes, we average about 30 a day. Our GPS program is about the same, so they live in the community, but they wear our bracelet, and we know where they are, and they have limitations. We do have some that are eligible to work that just don't want to, and or are unemployable. So
if they don't want to work, they just sit there?
they don't have to. Yeah, they do not. We can't force them to get a job. We work with them, and we work with temp agencies and other businesses that will say, I need 3 people or 4 people, and certainly we make the inmates aware of that, but we can't force them to go to work.
But I still think it's a good program.
Yes.
You are getting people out.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Okay, thank you very much.
Supervisor Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, just an observation based on something you said earlier. You're basically a hotel keeper that can't put up a no vacancy sign. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Also, and especially with the mental health issues, I think that's a good segue into this question. And I think Mark brought up a point that sometimes people that are watching don't understand the difference between capacity and functional capacity, and they don't understand the issues as they relate to housing people in areas that aren't designed for their type of inmate and the financial impact that it can have on the county.
Sure, and yes, I probably didn't explain that very well. 320 inmates is really our functional capacity, and that means that we can put vulnerable inmates, those that either because of the type of crime that they committed or because of their education level and how they function, they really need to be in one part of the jail or they'd be preyed upon by our general population. So that's one set of people. Then we have obviously males, females. We have sentenced, non-sentenced inmates that we need to keep apart. Then we have people who are involved in the crimes together. We have to keep them separate. So there's a lot of different things, a lot of moving parts. So if we have 355 people in our facility, 355 inmates, We can't do that. And then we start to get into the vulnerable inmate who is attacked, and there is some there's some additional liability to the county because we weren't able to separate. We're required to have a classification system, and we're required to classify and house people based on certain criteria. 320 inmates is really where we're able to do that with the 30 beds to move people around.
Thank you.
Supervisor Keller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff Motz, I just have a simple question here. On page 247, which is where your program budgets are listed, way down at the bottom is the jail program. And in that, it breaks down labor and capital and other expenses and comes up with a total expense of $11,144,000. And I think you said you're kind of average or your range about 330 inmates at this time. So if you just simply divide that out, that comes out to $33,771 per inmate as a cost per year, I'm assuming. And is that satisfactory to you? Is that average for county jails? Is that high, low? Do you have any idea on that?
Right. Is it average? I certainly, our labor costs are really no different than Outagamie, Brown. As a matter of fact, probably less than many of the area counties when it comes to what we pay our employees. So is that the average? I would say yes, it is. The quality of life that we enjoy here in Winnebago County is partly due to having a facility that can house inmates, and that's expensive. There is just, certainly wish it was less, certainly wish we didn't have 330 inmates today and looking at an expansion, but that's part of providing safety and security to our county.
Thank you.
The option to ship people to other facilities is always there, but it's $51.40 a day. For every inmate, it's $51.40. And when you look at the type of inmate that, let's say, Wapaka County will take, and by the way, a lot of area counties that have the same overcrowding issue we do, my guess is that we would be going to Marathon County. So we'd be going to the Wausau area, and we'd be transporting our inmates back and forth, which is an expense, on top of the $51.40 a day, on top of medical expenses that we already provide here at our jail. And then there's certain inmates that they're not going to take. They don't take behavior problems. They don't take inmates that have medical issues that cause them a lot of extra work. It is a very small population that we can actually ship to other counties, if it comes to that.
Thank you.
Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No question, it was really just something for our listening or viewing public. When we talked about we can't force a prisoner to get a job, a work release job, so on, people should realize, and I understand why you had to do this, but every time they leave the facility, when they come back, there has to be a strip search and a body cavity search. And speaking personally, if I were knowing that I would have to be strip searched and have a cavity search after I went to a job every single day, I'm not so sure I'd want a job either.
We do not do a body cavity search. We need a warrant to do that. But we do strip search our Hubers.
Don't they have to lean over and?
Sure. And we also have a scanner that they walk through. We, understand that that's for the safety of our inmates.
Oh, I know. Yes, I'm saying I know why you'd have to do it.
Yes, we almost had a death in our facility on a heroin overdose, which really drove the purchase of that scanner through the jail fund. To not do that, we would open ourselves up to, I guarantee, a multi-million-dollar lawsuit within a short period. I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I do understand. I understand why you have to do it. I'm saying you could get kind of squeamish if you're a prisoner and know that you have that to face every single day coming back from a job. That's all, that was my only observation, just so people knew why there might be some reasons why some people may not be getting a work release job.
Supervisor Wojciechowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had two more questions. One was relating to corrections. I know that finding people to fill those jobs is always difficult around Wisconsin. Are you understaffed in that area, would you say?
Yes, recently we're up to 8 openings in our corrections division for deputies. We just hired 4, but they will go through about a 8 to 10 week training process, so they really don't become part of the schedule until then. But we still have 4 positions open. We also have patrol positions open. It is very difficult to hire people. When we used to get hundreds of applications for one position, we'll get 20 for 4 positions.
And then my second question is relating to body cams. Could you just give us an update kind of on how that's been going, if you've increased the number of body cams, and if any more policies around that have been put in place?
We, in our patrol division, every patrol deputy wears a body camera. We also have in-car cameras that we've had since 2010. They have been extremely helpful in not only the prosecution of crimes and obviously recording the interaction, but also if someone has an allegation of misconduct, it's very simple to just view the video. We view it with them, and I really cannot remember the last time that we had any type of discipline issue based on an interaction with the citizen where a body cam was in play.
I know we had the discussions about the storage of all the video. Is that a problem yet, or has it kind of been solved?
Well, storage is the issue. So the cameras themselves are about $600 to $800, depending upon what type of camera you buy. It's the storage. However, companies are working with us to compress the video so that we can store more video with the storage that we currently have. And then as time permits, we're able to rewrite over all of that if there is no issues with the interaction that occurs.
Thank you.
Sheriff, if I can ask a quick question, that my impression was that most of our inmates with Huber privileges are actually out on location and perhaps alcohol bracelets?
Those are GPS inmates. Those are separate.
Okay.
But the approximately 30, or the average of 30 actual Huber inmates will come back after typically 12 hours of work.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Sheriff Motz, for being in attendance today. And as long as you're here, perhaps a non-budgetary question for you. I've become a little vigilant in driving habits, hyper-defensive after the last 6 months or so. Do you need any help from this board? I mean, is there anything that we can do to help pass something that would help recognize specific driving issues or problems that you're seeing out there? I mean, I see all kinds of crazy stuff. Whether it's dogs in people's laps, or dilapidated vehicles that shouldn't be on the road, or cell phone usage, which continues to probably be the #1 factor in distracted driving incidents. But is there anything that this board can do to help you guys do your job more effectively?
Well, I appreciate the offer, and you're right. We see more aggressive type driving and more inattentive driving than we have. A lot of that is due to cell phones and other technology that people have available to them. And certainly it's something that we look for in violations and continue to try and enforce those current laws that are on the books. But it's difficult. The law is written in a way that makes it difficult for us to actually enforce cell phone use. I do think, though, we're going to see a hands-free statute coming out. It's been something that has been discussed amongst the sheriffs within the state, and there is some support for it.
And just a last question in regards to the 441 construction project. I've recognized that that is a safety issue and that there really is no areas built through that corridor to facilitate emergencies. Say if somebody would have a blowout, flat tire, something like that, would you recommend that either through the highway committee or through individual board members, we contact the DOT and see if they can't, build something in there? They got the green truck that drives around once in a while that picks up vehicles that break down or whatnot, but it's going to take somebody getting killed up there before the DOT actually creates a safe zone or safe zones through that corridor. Is there anything that you could recommend that we can do?
Well, it's part of the construction process, and I'm not one of the traffic engineers, obviously, but people have done a pretty good job of recognizing, not that they drive slower, but they're more aware. They're more aware when they're in that area. We've had some issues, and anytime we have any type of collision or stalled vehicle, it really clogs things up because there is no place to go, especially if you're on the main span of the bridge. But we're aware of that, so we make sure that we have staffing that deals with that, as well as DOT's assistance vehicle up there. I don't know that there's anything we can do other than, wait the year and a half or 2 years that we have left before it's completed.
Thank you.
Supervisor Lautenschläger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clarify a couple things on Mr. Eisen's question on the partnership with the ALDA in the jails. And I know Dr. Topol will talk about that when he does the human services. But the big thing with that is that's one of the positions I am and a couple of, and Mike Norton, the other supervisor, went to the NACO convention this year, and that was one of the positions that was targeted from other counties around the country of helping in the county jails, and not so much even so getting the AODA treatment while they're in the jail, but the big thing is aftercare when they get out, because right now a lot of times what happens with our inmates is when their sentence is up, it's just kind of we open the door and we say, here you go. I mean, there's no any kind of aftercare plans or anything for these people. This position will help with that. So hopefully a recidivism levels might go down a little bit, because hopefully we won't get these people coming through the revolving door. So that's a position that's been targeted throughout the country. So so I'm glad that we've added that position, and it's on the human services budget. The other thing is the mentally ill in the jails. I agree they don't belong there. I mean, I worked Winnebago Mental Health for 34 years, and it's not usually our DD, our developmentally disabled, or people that are going in there. It's more of our personality disorders and our antisocial people, because they're right on that borderline. They know what they're doing, but a lot of times the population that's going into the county jails are females, because we have no place for maximum security or female inmates or patients except for Winnebago Mental Health. Winnebago, I know, is in a process right now. They got permission from the state to build the 8, I think, bed maximum security. So most of the time the patients that are coming from Winnebago, a lot of times they're spending time in jail, are the ones that assault staff, and it's mainly the females. And Mark's right. I mean, to send a patient to Winnebago Mental Health, it's $1,000 a day. So if we have somebody in there for a year, I mean, it's big money. So, especially if it's one of our county residents, the county has to pay that. So just want to clear a few things up. Thanks.
Supervisor Binder.
I was just curious, do you feel there's more we can do on the educational part, rather than basically wait until they go to jail, that we could maybe do more in the high schools? You gave us a presentation a while back. You brought a young lady that kind of straightened your life around. Do you have programs like that where she would go into the high school and kind of talk to the younger generation And then also, when they do get released, is there support programs where it's mandatory that they attend for 6 months or something like that, so that they don't go right back to their same ways and their?
That would have to be court ordered and part of their sentence. So it would really be the courts that do that. Getting back to the young lady that was here, she had some hiccups. So the last time I spoke to her, which was about 2 weeks ago, she had 45 days of sobriety. But now remember, you talked to her about 6 months ago. So she's only put 45 days together. So we have to be very careful about what we expose our kids to, right? Yeah, there are some programs, and we do have a police school liaison throughout the county that work with kids. The internet makes it difficult. There are lots of things that I did not experience or have influencing me when I was a kid. So it's difficult, but yeah, we're trying to do more with education with our police school liaison. There are programs like Rise Together, where they go into high schools and talk about their experiences as drug addicts and where they're at with their life. It's hard to impact a kid who thinks he's invincible.
Supervisor Furry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Off topic of the budget, but as long as we've kind of opened that door here with the multiple questions, and it's a good opportunity for the supervisors to address questions to the sheriff. How can I word this? I recall when I-41 was updated to an interstate. I recall when the speed limit was lifted from 65 to 70, as I'm sure you do. I recall a comment being made, 70 will be strictly enforced. I'm just referring to that corridor within Winnebago County. My observation is average 80 maybe now. I mean, they're blowing by me like I'm standing still, and I'm self-incrimination. I'm probably doing 75. So what's your thoughts on that?
We'll wait for you on the way home. You're exactly right. People got comfortable with 70, and now 75, I think, is probably more the average speed. And certainly we have some doing 80, 85, 90. Does that mean that we're not going to stop somebody for doing 75? No, we will.
Is that an area that's hard to actually set up law enforcement because it's kind of a confined area? You got everything boxed in and all that?
Yeah, it's very difficult. Even though we have shoulders that are very wide to do traffic stops on, number one, it's extremely busy, so there's some danger that's involved there. But more so because we really have to use the overpasses to do what's called a laser detail, where the officer is up on the overpass, shoots a laser at the vehicle, and then there's chase vehicles. Well, I don't a lot of times have two deputies that can work together to do that. So a lot of it is just what we find, and certainly when we're watching for you today and we get behind you, you're going to do 70. So when we have marked cars out there, they slow down, typically. So it's a tough area to do a lot of enforcement, but it is an area that we do some, as much as we can.
Supervisor Wernicke.
I got a couple of questions. First of all, have you got any other prisoners from other jails in your jail now?
We do. We have one Calumet inmate. They pay us $51.40 a day. At least this was yesterday's numbers. And then we do have some intensive sanctions inmates from the state. So there's about anywhere they range from 15 to 20 that we get money for. So really, you can reduce the population by about 15 inmates from where we are right now. So today's count, I believe, was 333. Reduce that by 15, and we're at that 318 area in there. And we would get rid of those inmates. We would stop taking them, but we lose that revenue. We get $51.40 per day for those approximately 15 to 20 inmates. And you'll see the revenue that projections that are in my budget.
Okay. The other question is confiscated property. Have you been getting any confiscated property? I don't know exactly how it works, but I understand that you have a right to confiscate a person's car if it's used in commission of a crime or any other property. Have you gotten any?
We do occasionally. That's gotten a little more difficult than it has in the past. When we confiscate property, typically it is sold, and then a large portion of that, I think half actually, goes to the school district, and then we receive the other half as revenue. But many of the vehicles that we will take from them are not worth a lot of money, so we're only talking probably $1,000 or somewhere in there.
What school district does it go to?
Wherever the confiscation occurs.
Okay. One other note is that I'm on the highway committee, and you used to send one of your sheriff's deputies, and he did contribute quite a bit, but lately we haven't seen him. Could we see him again?
You sure can. Our staffing levels are really low right now. We have 3 openings on patrol. I have one deputy that's going out on a disability, and it's left us pretty tight with attending those things.
Okay, thank you, Sheriff.
Okay, thank you, Sheriff. We'll be taking a short break, but I want to remind you, as you're going along, there's a pink sheet that you have here to fill out for that you can add and delete to the budget. So if you see things that we've been discussing and you want to take it off, list it here. Doug Protasik's in the back, or you can give it to Mr. Bodner. And between the two of them, they'll get it handled where they'll add or delete things from the budget.
The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio simulcast on Oshkosh FM 101.9. Like us on Facebook at our Oshkosh Media page. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. Please stay with us. Coverage will resume shortly. The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org.
Start our budget again.
Are we ready to move on to coroner?
I'll wait till they get settled down here. Page 253, the coroner.
The chart of employees for the coroner is on page 257. The coroner has one full-time position, that is the coroner, and one part-time position is his administrative assistant. The coroner also uses deputies, and the deputies are paid on a per diem and a contract basis. They're not considered county employees. And the chart of significant changes in that department is on page 258, and Barry is in the back of the audience and can answer any questions that you have.
Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at page 255, and I appreciate that you have continued to keep us as a leader in the state with regard to tissue and organ and eye donations. I'm not sure how you do that, but I think that's great. And I was wondering where we rank, looking at number 6 about infant death, where do we rank in the state in regards to child and infant deaths?
She wants to know where do we rank in the state with infant deaths?
We have too many of them. There's no ranking system. I don't know what the numbers are in the other counties. It's not.
Okay.
We do have our infant death review where we go through and discuss so we can make changes so that children don't have to go through the same problems at different places, some place where safety is a factor or things that we can recommend to other parents or institutions or whatever else for safety factors to keep children alive. So we do have the infant death review along with all the other reviews that we are doing.
Okay. On page 260, there's a significant increase in workers' comp. Most of the departments were raising, about 30%, but yours has gone up like 235% for just one full-time and one part-time employee. Why did you need such a huge increase on workers' comp?
You have to ask payroll or finance about that.
It's a matter of properly, well, there are two things. One is the general increase in workers' comp rates, which were increased by about 33 to 35% across the board. Because of the fund balance being at appropriate levels, we're no longer able to use the fund balance to subsidize the rates. But also, those deputy coroners have always been a bit of a problem in terms of doing the accounting. And they're working at enough hours that they're at least substantial part-time employees, maybe close to full-time employees. And we decided, since they are, for workers' compensation purposes, legally covered by the Workers' Compensation Act as county employees, we would be responsible in the event of a workplace injury to them, that we really should be charging the department for workers' comp rates for those deputies who are not regular employees. They work on a per diem basis, but we decided it was more appropriate to charge the department for the same workers' comp rates that other employees are charged.
Okay, one final question. On page 262, there's a significant increase, $2,700 for medical supplies, and with just 2 employees, what are your medical supplies that you need for the 2 of you?
Well, we, like the other agencies that are going out into the community, we brought Narcan on so that we all, actually 4 of us, I have 3 deputies, 2 that are out there all the time, myself and my secretary. So we have Narcan for everybody. The other medical supplies also are for our testing procedures. I don't have the same number of pages, so the supplies, body bags, it's everything that we use in testing. We have needles and syringes and kits that we have to provide to do our testing for when we don't do autopsies and stuff. So we have quite a bit of stuff that has to happen in the investigation of a death.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Gabbard.
Barry, I know you know that I am concerned about the heroin situation, and it's getting worse and worse. So I guess my first question is, how many heroin deaths do we have so far this year compared to last year? And can you explain to me on page 255, continue to work on heroin task force and addiction problem? What are the goals of the heroin task force?
Well, we're charged more with prevention, education, keeping track of the numbers, obviously. And as far as your first question, our testing procedure for getting 6-monoacetylmorphine, which is the heroin in the extracted sense, there's a short life of heroin, and to prove heroin sometimes is very difficult. It comes back as morphine or 6-monoacetylmorphine. So we have to keep working our prevention stuff. I lost the train of thought when I'm trying to answer 3 questions. So the testing procedures is where we were at 30 days to get our results back. We're out about 4 months because we're going through the state hygiene lab because of a situation that happened with another member of county organization. And we couldn't keep dealing with St. Louis, who was giving us a 20 to 30 day turnaround. So now I have to explain to families that because of dynamics, we are out to 3 to 4 months. Well, then I just came from a meeting 2 weeks ago where one of the administrators for the state hygiene indicated that one of the machines went down and they were trying to work through a broken process. So they're also buying a new machine, working on a decrepit machine and doing some stuff. So our testing procedures are lacking, to say the most. I'd love to go back, even if we have to pay for it, to turn around to get to 20, 30 days would be phenomenal for law enforcement, for the DA, for the families. To have to tell some family that we can't give you a result of that autopsy or that toxicology for 3 or 4 months is not acceptable, but it's what we have to work with. And it's out of our hands as coroner because of some restrictions put on by working parties together. Hope that answered it. As far as the number of deaths, because of the lack of the last 4 months data, we can estimate from what we have at physical scene, at the scene, history, and a lot of other working mechanisms, what we think is going to be a overdose. We can't say it's heroin, we can't say it's cocaine or fentanyl or whatever it may be, but we expect it to be fentanyl. I mean, a lot of powder by the person's body or whatever it may be. We have 14 confirmed through this period of time and 14 more that we suspect, with a few more that we think. And as soon as I leave here, I'll be in Fond du Lac today on another one that probably is. So when it gets through, a couple of months into 2018, we're going to be over 30, and we haven't hit 30 before. We've been at, well, I think we had 30 once. It's been 28, 27, 29, but we're running around that 30 number up until this year. We're going over that number this year for overdoses, no doubt about it. We got 50 some days to go this year.
Thank you.
Supervisor Shorsey.
I would just like to talk about the infant death issue, and just to let you know that there is a wonderful program called Parent Connection, and it is under the Family Services umbrella. And the county, Winnebago County, Outagamie County, and the health systems are part of that. And where a new parent, a first-time parent, is deemed to be at risk for child abuse or neglect or poor parenting, they are offered services at birth in the hospital. And we used to track the impact on infant deaths, so looking at the group that received that service versus the people who did not. And it was favorable at that time. I've not seen that data yet, or recently, but they just, Parent Connection just received national recognition for the quality of their program. So and this program's been in existence since the late 1990s. So we do have, from the healthcare perspective and the county perspective, we do have a very good program that reaches those at-risk populations.
I'd like to, I thank you, Ms. Shorsey. We do have a good program in place where we try to help educate families and do stuff, but sometimes you can't get to the perpetrators ahead of time. And I hope this isn't too graphic, but at the days of having a baby swung by its heels into a wall, causing death, it's unbelievable. And I know there's officers sitting here, and you guys have been there and seen the same stuff over the years, and having to deal with that and any other unlawful death of a child, those kids don't have a chance to begin with. And there's situations that they have growing up, they don't have a chance either. So it's just a terrible situation that we have to keep fighting through. And again, it could be child death review, suicide prevention and education, the heroin task force that a lot of us are being touched with the dynamics of the opiate crisis that's out there. It's out of control, and we need to get a grasp on it, and we have to keep working at it. As far as the numbers, they're going to keep going up. Our methadone clinic out here on the frontage road is taking over 200 people a day, just basically out of Oshkosh. So it's a problem.
Yeah, the Parent Connection program definitely does deal with the issue of ignorance, but it can't deal with the issue of criminality. That's a whole other camp.
Supervisor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Busby, I've got a question for you about the Narcan use. You say you and your deputies each have Narcan with you when you're going out on calls. About how many times have you had to use it?
Thank God my deputies and I have not used ours, but I know the Sheriff's Department, I know Amarillo Police Department has. And when we could keep track of Narcan because of the use that was given, basically it was given by the Oshkosh Fire and Gold Cross. And that's probably 3 or 4 years ago when we were keeping track of the numbers. Probably over 100 people were being saved a year at that point. Now more saves are happening, but we don't even know who's getting Narcan. The actual addict is getting it, the family members are getting it, it's out into the workplace. A lot of people can have it. So the number of people being saved with these addicts will actually have a party with planned, you're my Narcan man today, you can't be drugged up today. And they'll have a party and somebody goes down, they're injecting or with a nasal, they're giving the Narcan. So there's a sick society out there, and it's getting worse. So it's not going to get better for a while.
Thank you.
The other thing on that, Mr. Smith, is carfentanil, and I think I brought it to some of the board's attention before. Carfentanil is 10,000 times stronger than morphine, 100 times stronger than fentanyl. It is a elephant tranquilizer, basically, and there are people putting it into their system. And if there was an officer recently this last spring that had some powder on his shirt, and he brushed it off, and it happened to be in a warmer climate, and it was absorbed into his skin, and he went down. His peers gave him Narcan 4 times. Usually it takes 1 or 2 cases to come back. They Narcaned him 4 times. He was in the hospital for 2 weeks and finally released because of HIPAA and some other stuff. We don't know what his after effects were going to be, but it's out there for our employees. That could be first responders, volunteers, firemen, paramedics, policemen, social workers, anybody that's out there into these homes. If they come into this powder, you have to be totally gowned up. You have to have mask, eye protection, gloves up to here and sleeves up to there. You have to be totally covered when we get into these situations. And God, I hope I never see a police officer or paramedic go down, but we have to be prepared for this. And it's a dangerous situation out there, and we need to be on top of it.
Okay, thank you. There are no more questions. Page 276, airport.
Oh, there's a set of keys left here. Thank you.
The chart of employees for airport is on page 281. For 2018, they're budgeted for 8 full-time positions. That's the same as for 2017. And the chart of significant changes is on page 282. Peter's in the back of the room and can take questions you have with regard to the airport.
Page 292, highway. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may, I'm just kind of curious because I don't know. On page 282, it says airport landing fees. Who pays these fees? And the next question is, how are they collected?
Airport landing fees are charged to commercial aircraft such as airliners. We've had one during AirVenture, but also any air cargo aircraft that are carrying cargo for hire, and any aircraft charters, what some people call corporate jets that are on a for a hire basis. Those landing fees are collected by Basler Flight Service.
So pretty minimal bookwork.
Well, we had an incident or change this year because Basler Flight Service had a change in management and didn't understand the collection, how it was done, the new managers. So there was a period of time earlier in the year where the fees were not collected. They have gone back now and collected as much as they could. So we are behind on that one, and we did overestimate the budget amount for 2017 as well too. We admit that.
Thank you. A couple items under that is land rental, and it talks about the IAC national show that was just here, I believe, a couple months ago.
Yes.
And now looking forward to next year hosting it again. I was at an aviation committee meeting, I don't know, 3-4 weeks ago, and it was my understanding from you that there wasn't going to be any fee collected, but now there's $35,000.
I'm not sure where you're getting the $35,000. There are increases built into this amount for other landholders. The problem with the IAC is that when we were talking with the organization about the national competition here, they told us that there would be revenue coming in. What the I believe as a contest director failed to tell us is that that was fee paid to the previous airport was for hangar rental that the airport down there owned in Texas. We wouldn't be receiving that.
They didn't rent any land from us. They were all on, there was county land, but it's leased by EA already. So technically there is no revenue coming into us to the airport for this event. We are talking with them about maybe a nominal fee to cover some of our expenses in the future. So, but again, we have not come to a concrete agreement with them yet.
Okay, I guess now I'm really confused because it says additional revenue expected from IAC National.
Well,
So are we getting something or not getting something?
Well, at this point, we don't know, but that's not the full 35,000, because it says increase based on estimation for rental and current tenants and additional revenue based on IAC. That's a minute portion. We had thought that IAC, we'd get maybe 5,000 from them because of the estimate that we were given when they were considering coming here. So, again, that was based on a hangar rental they did in Texas, which we didn't get here because we don't own the hangars.
Thank you.
At the use.
On page 286, under capital outlay improvements 58002, you had requested apparently $129,000, but in the executive's budget there's only 12. Can you explain why?
That was, we removed a piece of equipment, I believe it was a Bobcat, small loader that we'd wanted for the airport. Realized we couldn't afford that this year, so it was removed from the budget.
Thank you. And the next one, equipment, you had requested $268,000, and it came out $18,000.
Right. Again, there was a larger piece of equipment, a replacement for our fire department that we felt would probably be more appropriate in the capital budget in a future year, so we removed that as well too.
Moving ahead to page 288, about the third or fourth item down says ground maintenance, line item 55007. You had put in 34,000, and it came into the executive's budget today at 151,000.
Yep. That was a transfer from small capital. It's seal coating and slurry sealing portions of the perimeter road. It was more appropriate under grounds maintenance because it'll be a service.
Do you know where small capital is?
That would be the capital outlay, actually, on page 290. That was originally that's where we had it. We just transferred it.
Okay. Thank you. Then if I could, on page 291, the second item, field maintenance 51703, can you tell me what all is in there? You don't have to list everything that's in there, but give me an idea of what's in.
A lot of that, well, obviously labor is in that. The other expenses are going to be items such as replacement lighting, edge lights on the runways and taxiways that get replaced, signage on the airport. There's also de-icing product that we use during the wintertime. There's also fuel that we use for the vehicles during winter operations and grass cutting operations during the summer. So.
I'm now going to read from a document that a number of us were given, and it relates to Taxiway B. I think we'll all be happy when Taxiway B is over. I think I counted the phrase Taxiway B 14 times in this budget. So speaking on Taxiway B, during the project, the topsoil, and we're speaking of topsoil, correct me if I'm wrong, Taxiway B runs east and west.
Correct.
Just to the south of there is a runway that runs east and west.
Correct.
Just to the south of there, there was a berm or a mound that also runs east and west.
Correct.
It says during the project, the topsoil from that berm was given to the EAA. During the same time, the airport purchase topsoil to put around taxiway B. Can you explain why?
Well,
Why we gave away topsoil and bought some at the same time?
No, we didn't give away anything. That topsoil belongs to the contractor that was being removed and recontoured on the south side of the runway. So according to the plan specs from the FAA and Bureau of Aeronautics and the whole project itself. So we didn't have control over that. We purchased topsoil to fill in ruts that were done from aircraft and other vehicles going off runways and taxiways during EAA. Those were soft areas, so we needed to add soil to those areas to make it smooth in transition from the taxiway to the turf. So we obviously, again, we could not take that soil that they removed, recontoured, until the project was done. EAA, it's up to the contractor in the specs that when at the end of the project or toward the end of the project, if he has any excess soil or turf, whatever, it's up to him to remove from the airport or dispose of however he feels necessary. EA approached the contractor. Whether they purchased it or not, I don't know. But again, that was all per spec from the Bureau of Aeronautics and the FAA.
Are you aware that that topsoil went to the EAA
Yes.
area?
Yes. Again, we don't have control over it. If it makes you feel better, that soil went onto county property that just EA leases. It was just to fill in ruts and low areas that they felt they needed to fill in. So it's for the betterment of everybody on the airport.
Thank you.
Supervisor Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So my first question for you, Mr. Mole, would be, why wouldn't the EAA be responsible for filling in those ruts that we had to buy topsoil to fill in?
It's an airport function. Because they're on airport operating areas, on the runways, taxiways, they don't lease those areas, they only.
But if they cause those ruts,
Well,
they're still not responsible?
it's one of those, it could have happened not as a result of EA. Some of it did, and some of that was billed back to EA for that. So depending on the area, again, we try to keep track of what really is EA related and what's not. So some of that was, some of it was not.
All right, so my second question would be regarding the carpeting and the control tower.
Sure.
Could you explain that cost?
Sure. We are replacing the anti-static carpeting in the control tower cab, as well as the carpeting in the air traffic control manager's office, which is one floor below the tower cab. I'm guessing off the top of my head, there's probably about 400 square feet, but those anti-static squares in the tower cab cost a lot more, and the cost to remove them and replace them, there's labor involved in that too. That's why it may seem a little high than normal carpeting. So.
And then also, under significant changes, under maintenance for buildings, you have a $10,000 an increase for additional maintenance. And then 5 lines down, for building repairs, you have $5,000 increase based on planned repairs to airports, hangars and airport-owned structures. Are those the same thing or different?
Those are, let's see, let me look. You're on page 282, is that right?
282, yeah.
Okay. Maintenance of buildings increase, additional hangars, yes, that would be for T hangars and some of the other hangars we have on the north side that we rent out to customers. And you're also looking at, I'm sorry, which line was that?
It was...
Maintenance of buildings?
Building repairs.
Building
It's under grounds
repairs.
maintenance.
Okay, building repairs would be contracted work that we contract out. So in other words, we do roof coatings on some of the hangars to prevent water leaks and to stop water leaks. That has to be contracted out because we don't have the equipment to do that. So that would be an increase there.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to follow up with a question that the Vice Chairman asked. Grounds maintenance, on the significant changes on page 282, it listed as 117,000. But on the budget on page 288, it's actually 147,600. Your explanation says 117, but it's actually 147,600. Where does that extra come in?
Okay, well, in the grounds maintenance on page 288, that includes all of the work we're planning to do out on the airport grounds. Where on 282 is just the increase, and we're looking at the seal coating and slurry seal on portions of the perimeter road. So,
Okay, but
So
the
it's not gonna
increase you're
equal.
actually asking for is not 117, 117,000, which you mentioned in your significant changes on 282. You're actually asking for $147,600 in increase.
So I guess I'm not sure where you're looking then.
I'm looking at page 282, and I'm
Yes,
looking at page
right, I see that.
288.
280, okay.
Line number 55007.
Okay, I got 151,000 in the executive budget.
Yes?
Okay, so that, you take away the 34 that we requested, and that 117,000 was transferred originally from capital outlay into field maintenance.
Okay.
Go ahead.
That significant changes page doesn't identify the total amount being asked for. It only explains the difference. That's why they're not the same number.
Okay.
That significant changes only identifies the change.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 280, under goals and objectives, item 6 sets a goal to strengthen the partnership with EAA to ensure a viable and successful EAA venture event and other year-round EAA-hosted activities. My question is, how come there's no mention about renewing the agreement with EAA? It would seem to me that that would be a significant objective and goal for the airport department.
There is a misconception by a number of parties on the EA lease. The 25-year initial point comes up for renewal next year in May. Now, if you read the agreement that was written, again, 24 years ago, it said that at the 25-year point, EA has the exclusive right to enter into 3 additional 8-year options to extend it to another 24 years, so a total agreement of 49 years. Winnebago County does not have the ability to renegotiate that unless both parties agree to open up the negotiations. EA has not indicated they're willing to do that. They intend to exercise those 3 additional options.
So there isn't any need to amend or to approve an agreement with them for 2018?
No.
Thank you.
We've asked about certain areas that maybe we could amend. At this point, they're not willing to do that.
Supervisor Ellis.
Thank you, Chairman. I got a question on the levy here. It could be either Peter or Mark here. And it ends up to be about $74,000, which makes about a 10% increase in the levy, which is normal to most agencies, that in the county. What is the reason for that much of an increase? Is there something going to be in the airport or something like that that we're going to be doing that would demand that?
Well, the levy is a function of both expenses and revenues. So if you have a decrease in revenues, that can impact it as well. And off the top of my head, it could be a decrease in revenues that's driving that. I don't believe we have any military vehicles that we're storing for the government anymore, and that could be a factor. I'd have to double check the timing.
Supervisor Braun.
My question has been answered by other superintendents.
Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The $117,000 increase in grounds maintenance, which is explained, and I understand, increase based on perimeter road improvements needed in 2018, it's under contractual services. My question is our own Winnebago County Highway Department going to do that maintenance, or are we contracting to someone else? And my question would be, who's your, and if not our department, why not our department?
Our first option would be to contact the highway department to have them do the work. If they're unable to do it because of time or other projects that are keeping them from doing that, then we'd go out contract outside. But our first choice is usually highway department.
Some of that work is very time sensitive. You have to have, for instance, runways and taxiways available when you're going to have aircraft coming in. And, bad weather at the airport, of course, coincides with icy and bad weather on the highway system as well. So, the highway department's first priority is to keep the highways clear and drivable. So sometimes there's a competition of what the priorities are, but we can't put off clearing ice off of runways or taxiways. It has to be taken care of.
Supervisor Sinkstock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Peter, I'm referring to page 276. It says airport budget narrative regarding the fire station. You never hear much discussion regarding that. Is there any financial challenges coming to us within the next 2 or 3 years regarding that fire station?
Yes, there is. We've entered discussions with the facilities and property management group because there are some updates that need to happen to that building. That building hasn't been rehabbed to any great extent since it was built in 1976, I believe it was. We have replaced air conditioning systems. However, the boilers do need to be replaced. There are some space issues that the fire department would like to see changed. The restrooms need to be updated as well too. So at this point, we don't have a firm budget for that. Again, we're working with facilities on getting that into the system and trying to get that on the schedule.
Thank you.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So first question I have is in regards to line 53505, promotions airport. I know last year there was considerable discussion about the methods of airport promotion. Specifically, some of the concern with the editorials, or I'm trying to think of the word that was used to categorize the advertising that was done in certain aeronautic magazines, but when I talked to certain people around the airport, it sounded like maybe they weren't focused towards the right user group who may be more intended to use maybe a sport aviation airport like Whitman. Are we generally going to be using the same promotional vehicles in 2018 as 2017?
Probably not. If you recall, when we started this program, it was the first couple of years were geared more toward educating the citizens of Winnebago County and the surrounding area on why Whitman is here and what facilities we have to offer and what services we have to offer. That was done with the newspaper on those little strip ads in the bottom of the Sunday papers. Now we're going more toward advertising the airport itself as a destination, as a possible solution to company needs, that maybe they can expand here or even move their company here. So that whole focus is going to change a little bit. And we're working with Go EDC much more now than we were before, so that's going to change our tact a little bit.
So with that said, this 65,000, which was a fairly significant increase over 2016 actual budgeted or spent, is that necessary in this reworking of the promotional marketing plan, or and you said something about the strip ads in the bottom of the Northwestern. Are we going to continue to use those in 2018, or is that done? Or
That's done. That was completed last year in 2016. We are going to do some different ads in national or maybe international aviation magazines to increase the exposure, because we feel that the local advertising, the local promotion to explain why the airport is here and what we do, is that kind of program is over in a sense. So we're going forward now for national and international. So the 65 may seem like a high amount. The money we pay to our marketing consultant is only about a third of that. You know, magazine ads, newspaper editorials don't come cheap, so we have to have some money in there to accomplish that goal.
and when you say you're consultant for promotions, is that still next gen?
Yes, it is. We are going out for an RFP though, for in early 2018 to solicit new services. You know that.
You had said that in regards to relationship with EAA and future contract negotiations, I understand the answer for Mr. Eisen's question, but you stated that you had asked EAA for certain changes or amendments. Can you tell us specifically which changes perhaps you had asked them for?
I'd rather not, because we want to keep that close, and eventually that may come up again. So.
And in regards to, I see the first amendment to the budget that came through here today was potential expenditure of $5.5 million for a new building. In regards to that amendment, what if anything has changed between now and last February in regards to potential state and/or federal funding for that project?
The project to acquire state funding has been petitioned. It's been accepted by the Bureau of Aeronautics, but however, we do not have a firm date or a firm amount of how much money there's a potential for us to get. It has not been programmed into the 2018 budget for the State Bureau, and maybe 2019 before that comes up, potentially maybe 2020, we don't know yet.
So with regards to that, I did go to the public meeting, and I believe that there were 13 items that were petitioned for that was sent to the Bureau of Aeronautics. One of those items, I believe, was struck at the request of a number of the users there. That was something about a diagonal runway, if memory serves. But is there any reason to believe that based on that petition, and I believe that the administrative terminal building was rather low on that list, is there any reason to believe that we'll be getting any state or federal funding based on that petition for that specific project?
Well, I think there is a good chance, but I don't know. I can't speak definitively how much. That's up to the Bureau of Aeronautics, depending on how many projects they have in a given year and when we want to have that included in whatever budget year they're working on. I mean, right now they're working on 2019, 18 and 19 for that matter. We've asked them to put it into one of those years, but at this point, it's too early to tell really how much.
And the last question I would have in regards to that amendment, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very high priority and need for Winnebago County, where would you rate your support for that amendment?
It's a difficult question because there are so many needs that the airport has right now. I would maybe put it at a 6.
Fair enough, thank you.
Supervisor Shirk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up to Supervisor Haig's question, the accomplishments on page 279 reflect promotion through social media and print media with Next Gen Studios. At the last Aviation Committee meeting, there was significant criticism, especially of the website, in terms of its accuracy and updating. And I appreciate the fact that you recognize that it needs to be rebid. How much of the 65,000 is devoted to website development or lack of development?
What we paid to the consultant right now is $24,000, basically $2,000 a month out of that $65,000. So when Next Gen bid and was awarded the contract or the contract for services, they estimated about 1 hour a day of work that would go into just the marketing overall of services for the airport. So social media, website, any other activities. What that breaks down to in real terms, they've probably put more time into it than the 1 hour budgeted. So are we getting a good deal? Perhaps, perhaps not. It depends. We do know the website needs work.
Thank you.
Supervisor Schneider?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On our first amendment, it says account number 58001, buildings capital outlay. Is that the entire category? I do not have that line item number on my printed budget. Is that the entire category? I have 002 and 004.
Chuck, can you help?
Our first resolution number 208-112017, Amendment 1, add $5.5 million to the building capital outlay account. And in the verbiage on line 15, it says budget of Whitman Airport, account number 58001. Is that just a typo or is?
No, at this point, there is no money on that line item, so it doesn't show up in the book.
Okay, that's what I had. Yep. Thank you.
Supervisor Bender?
I know we partnered with the city of Oshkosh to build that business park, and I talked to several of the council members, and they wondered where we were on the taxiway. Well, we built the business park, and we still don't have any plans on the taxiway. Where are we on that, and
Well,
what is our plan?
the taxiway has been in the 5-year capital plan for, I know it was in there a year ago, I think this, and it will be in there again.
In 2018,
We have sought reimbursement from the Bureau of Aeronautics.
Yes.
And they've indicated that they're unwilling to give us a reimbursement until we have a tenant that needs a taxiway, which puts you in one of those catch-22s, because you're not going to get a tenant that needs a taxiway until you have one in there. They're not going to build a building on a future promise. So what we undoubtedly have to do is at least build a start of that taxiway so that it approaches one or more of the potential lots, so that we can find a tenant that needs access to the runways. And it's been indicated to us that the Bureau of Aeronautics would consider a reimbursement, although we don't know at what percentage level after the fact. So they seem willing to compensate us for it, but don't want to lay out any dollars until they know there's at least a tenant that wants that. Well, at least on the county side of that business park, it's our intention to hold out, even though we know it'll take longer to develop, for aviation-related businesses because of the higher paying jobs that are there, and because of the natural value of having, an airport with a superior runway and towers. On the city side, on the opposite side of the street, I probably would say I would encourage them to allow other businesses that may have only very tangential uses for the airport to move in on that side when there's an interest. But we really do have to get that taxiway in, and that's something we'll be coming to the board for, is funding of at least part of that taxiway so that we can have some developable lots with access to it. And I think it has a lot of potential. If you've ever had a chance to see the film on, I'm going to say it wrong, Van Nuys?
Van Nuys.
Van Nuys. Van Nuys Airport. It was a very similar type airport to ours, where commercial service stopped, and they were going to basically destroy that airport because there was no commercial service. And instead, they decided to develop it as a general aviation and business airport, and it's now an extremely thriving business area now. And we also have a lot of, I think people that don't know our airport think that nothing happens there outside of EAA. But I think we're measured on takeoff and landings. We're one of the busier airports in the state. Are we third or fourth, Peter?
We are the third busiest in the state of Wisconsin.
And that's with the EAA.
Yes.
Without the EAA, where would we fall?
We'd drop to fourth.
Yeah. So we're a busier airport. There's a lot more activity out there than people realize. And there's a significant number of employees that work for the businesses that are already out there. And so there's a great deal more activity. And that's one of the reasons they had to do a campaign locally, is because there was such a deep-seated belief, sometimes reinforced by some of the board members, that there was no business and no activity out at the airport, when in fact there's considerable value there, and people just weren't aware of it. But what we really want them to focus on in marketing now is helping us attract businesses on a national or maybe even an international basis that will have aviation-related jobs at the airport. It may be a little tougher because the state's been burned now by two aviation companies, Kestrel up in Superior and Morgan Aircraft over in the Sheboygan area, where those were ventures the state invested in that did not pan out. But the state is working very hard to make aviation a component of Wisconsin's growth, and we're certainly a part of that.
I guess I'd just like to say, I believe the aviation park, without the taxiway, we wasted our money, so it's something I think we need to pursue, and, you know, if it's gonna be all viable in the future, we have to basically make a commitment. You know, we made a commitment to build it, we partnered with the city, and I think we have to follow through and show that we do have the support to get this done.
I couldn't agree more. We need to do that first before businesses will have the confidence to develop in that site.
Supervisor Ellis.
Thank you, Chairman. Just as you're talking about that, was there any time that you ever met with Mark Roloff on, talking about the Brennan property with what the city has got, putting the Oshkosh Corporation out there instead of where they're going to put it?
No, but the site selection group for Oshkosh Corporation, this is my understanding, some of it may be based on rumor, but they had very specific considerations of what they wanted, and that would not have fit that description. They wanted, among the things they wanted was ready access to at least one highway. They wanted a high-profile location. There's a number of things that would not have met.
Yeah, I can see that at this time.
That's correct.
I was at a conference a while back, and there was an individual there that he says to me, "Oh, you're from Winnebago County?" And I said, "Yes." And he says, "I provided the funds to build that park out there." And I says, "You did?" He says, "Yep." And he says, "How's it going?" And I says, "Well, we're working at it, trying to get things going." He says, "You get the first business located there, and I'll see that you have all the federal funds available to locate other aircraft businesses there."
Yeah, that's something I'm not sure people fully realize. You know, the county didn't pay a penny towards getting sewer and water and streets and electricity. Almost all of that was economic development grants. There was a Department of Defense grants that related to supply chain issues and business development. There was a lot of money put into that was not the county's. Our only expenditure so far was purchase of our share of the land. And the next expenditure is going to be getting that taxiway in there, which we still hope to get reimbursements from the Bureau of Aeronautics.
Page 292, highway.
Now, highways budget comes in two parts. It's the highway budget and county road maintenance. But the total employment for the highway department is 83 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees. And the chart of significant changes is on page 297. And Ray is in the back of the room and can answer any questions you have on highway or county road maintenance.
Well, there were some questions last night on, I think Mr. Supervisor Haig questioned about the CB warning lights and stuff like that, and what was done and what wasn't done. If you could fill us in somewhat.
On the CB and Oak Ridge Road project?
Yeah, the question was specifically, why did the highway department decide not to put up temporary traffic signals at that location?
Oh, okay. When we got started when we hired a consultant to begin the design, one of the first tasks we had for them was to evaluate the intersection to determine if installing temporary signals would be a viable option, a safe option for the county. Given the time frame for construction, the project will be constructed in 2019. They evaluated the intersection, and it was determined through their engineering opinion that installing temporary signals would create a situation on the highway that's unfamiliar to the people that use the corridor, and it may reduce some of the angle type crashes that are there, but it would increase more rear end type accidents because of the vertical curve south of the intersection. So in their opinion, their recommendation to us was to not install any temporary signals, to continue with the stop signs that are currently on Oak Ridge Road, and move forward with the design and with the construction. In 2019, they felt that would be probably the safest approach to the project.
Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple questions on the accomplishments. When you say the project's scheduled for construction in 2020, another one in 2019, is that when they get started, or is that when they're going to be finished, or is that both?
I would have a cold cut combo.
On page 294?
294, which projects in particular are you referring to?
Numbers 1 and 2.
Oh.
It says, so the construction for 2020 is in number 1 and 2019, and I'm just trying to figure out, is that a completion date, or is that a beginning date?
It will be beginning and completion. The
Okay.
projects will be let under the state bid letting in those years respectively.
Okay.
And construction will be completed in those years as well.
Okay, then on page 302, I'm looking at equipment rental of $82,750. And we have a significant amount that we spend on equipment rental year after year after year. Is this anything we can actually purchase? Or is it something that could be purchased with other neighboring counties? Rather than having close to $100,000 a year just in rental?
Some of that equipment rental is with other counties. We
Oh.
rent their equipment sometimes.
Oh.
It's more or less focused on specialized equipment that we don't have a lot of work for that equipment. As if you recall, we have an enterprise fund, so we need to generate revenues on our equipment to help offset the depreciation costs.
Okay.
So if we don't have enough work for that equipment to generate those enough revenues, it doesn't make financial sense for the department to purchase them.
Okay, and then one final question. Have we had any major accidents or injuries involving highway workers in this year?
Major? We've had some injuries on the job, injuries, sure. I don't know what you would define as major.
Well, maybe a broken leg isn't major, but somebody who required, well, of course he'd be out of work for quite a while. Something they require a lot of surgery or long hospitalization or any deaths?
No deaths.
Okay,
Thank
that's
God.
good.
We have had some injuries that have required hospitalization, sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Supervisor Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ray, I'm wondering, why can't, as long as you're not putting in any stop signs or markers in there, how about additional warning signs that it's a dangerous intersection on either side, both the open area and where the stop signs are, previous to that, especially just below that rise, that hill, to let people know that they're coming to an intersection that's dangerous. Less expense for the highway department, but a lot better information for the motorist.
If I recall, there are some flashing yellow signs with the intersection ahead that are just south of that intersection to warn folks that are traveling northbound especially. Unfortunately, the more signs you put up, people don't pay attention, and it doesn't really have a tremendous impact on the accidents.
Have you got research that shows that?
Not personally, but yeah, and the industry has research that shows that, yes.
Thank you.
Supervisor Finch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, what is a vertical curve?
A vertical curve is either a hill or a
Okay.
valley.
That I'll understand, I can accept. However, I live pretty close to there, and I would rather see stoplights to start out. Could be temporary, could be full-time, I don't know. But I guess my point is it supposed to be really a bad corner, and I've driven it many times, and it could be a bad corner if somebody is not paying attention. I mean, let's face it. Going east and west, you had stop signs, and there were people that was doing something else instead of paying attention. But at least with stoplights, you got that visibility more than just a stop sign. I'd rather see, as soon as possible, a temporary stoplights there. And who knows if it works, go permanent with the stoplights. It'll be a heck of a lot cheaper than a roundabout. Granted, they say go on a roundabout, you can still have your accidents, but it won't be as serious because you're coming more on an angle when you hit. However, I would like to really see at least to try temporary stoplights first.
Well, if I
That's
could-
my feelings.
If I could respond, we did receive highway safety improvement funds for the project, which is paying 90% of the cost of the roundabout. And we went through a public process where we evaluated signals versus a roundabout, and a roundabout is the option that was selected by the majority of the folks that were in attendance. So that's the direction we're going. We're already in design. We have 30% of the plans done already. If we do something other than that, we'll lose all that federal
All
funding.
right, I understand that part, but what have we been doing for the past year? I mean, you said 2019, didn't you?
2019.
Yeah, so we got another year and a quarter to go yet. So what is the holdup? When we first started to talk about this, this was supposed to be priority.
It
Now,
is a-
the priority, if that's your priority, sir, I wonder what your backhand is as far as that goes, because, I mean, you're talking almost 4 years now.
Right, and that's the consequence of federal funds, unfortunately. There is a process we have to follow. We have to follow the federal process, and it takes from the day you decide you're going to build a project and you receive your municipal agreement with the DOT, it's 3 to 4 years before you can construct the project.
Okay, would it affect the project or the money if we still put up temporary lights until we're ready to start it?
In my opinion, yes. I mean, first of all, we have a recommendation from our professional consulting firm that installing temporary signals would not be a safe option. We would actually be creating more accidents by doing that. So in my position, I would prefer to follow their professional opinion and not install them.
If you'll permit, I would like to add something to the concept on this. If you have traffic signals there, the east-west traffic that currently stops at stop signs, when they have a green light, they'll have confidence that any approaching traffic is going to stop, and they'll move out into that intersection. But in part because of the short sight lines, it's quite possible that cars will run that red light on a regular basis. So you run the risk that you're going to actually increase the number of accidents because of the east-west traffic moving into the intersection when they have a green light, with the belief that the north-south traffic will stop at an intersection where they may not always stop. And so the trade-off is, you know, will there be more cars that stop because of the traffic lights? Or will there be cars that run the lights with the east-west traffic not holding back at the stop signs for clear traffic because they think when they have a green light they can proceed? So the experts are telling us that it's not clear that there'd be less accidents with the temporary lights there, and that there might in fact be more.
Well,
That's the issue.
I'm not a professional, but I'm just a common individual. But if I see a stoplight, ever since I was 16 years old, I knew you got a stop sign. What's been going on over the past number of years? People ran a stop sign. So you please explain to me, what is the difference?
Well, the difference is that people will be moving out into the intersection that would have been waiting at the stop sign because a light turns green, when the northbound traffic with the short sight lines will on occasion still run that intersection.
I know.
It's the experts that believe that you may be causing more accidents than you stop.
Well, I'll tell you what.
That's what it's about.
I'm going on record. I'm totally against what you're telling me and what the gentleman behind me is telling me. And if somebody, like Mr. Higgs said, does get hurt or get killed, it's on your shoulders, not mine.
I'm not going to take that from this board. You should remember that I put this to the board years ago to make the improvements to that intersection.
Supervisor Singstock.
Mr. Chairman, Ray, I'm referring to the Waukau Avenue project. Even though the EAA had no responsibility, they offered to pay for part of that project. Could you please tell me what they offered and has it been paid?
I believe they were going to contribute $40,000 towards the project, if my memory serves me correctly. And our office was going to send them a letter asking them to make their payment to us now that the project is finally completed. So I don't think we've received it yet, have we, Jill?
I would like to suggest that once we receive their payment, that someone, either the highway department, aviation department, or even management, sends the EAA a letter appreciating their cooperation.
We can certainly do that.
Thank you.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, kicking a dead horse or dog or something here, but there was recently a roundabout established at the intersection of Northland and 47 over in Appleton. Do you know if that roundabout has created more accidents than the previous stoplight that was there?
Do I know personally?
Sure.
No, I don't know personally.
That's gone way up. There's been news stories all over the place, TV, newspaper, wherever. So I think anytime you change something, there's change, and people don't react very positively to change, especially when they're not driving very attentively in the first place and something's different. The point being, there's a good probability that there's going to be more accidents no matter what we do in the short term at this intersection, especially the way this single lane roundabout is going to be designed, in my opinion. You said that the professional consultant recommended that we don't put a temporary light in there. I don't remember that as part of the debate. All I remember was it was part of our resolution that we gave the discretion to put a temporary light up in the hands of the highway department superintendent. In regards to your comments about the professional consultant, if there would be an accident at that intersection and there would be liability litigation, who'd be on the hook for that? Winnebago County or the professional consultant?
If there was an accident now,
Yes, sir.
the county nor the consultant would be, because it's an existing intersection.
In regards to the resolution about the roundabout, we added in there that there was at the discretion of the Winnebago County Highway Department superintendent to put up a temporary stoplight. If we don't put up a temporary stoplight and there's an accident there, don't you think that we could be held liable?
No. And then that might be a question for Mr. Bodnar, but in my opinion, no.
Well, I think we should definitely look into that because I think it's a high probability that that could happen. You had also mentioned that the highway safety improvement funds are going to cover 90% of this.
Yes.
Why would they cover 90% of this if they saw a resolution that the highway department superintendent has a discretion to put in a temporary stoplight?
The funding is for the construction of the roundabout itself. So that's what we're getting the federal funds for, which are paying 90% of the cost of the roundabout construction and design.
I understand that, but the stipulation in the resolution was that Winnebago County has discretionary authority to put in a temporary stoplight. I'm sure that they saw that as part of our resolution.
If the county wanted to fund temporary signals, we could fund temporary signals, which would be 100% county cost.
And I believe that that is part of the resolution, if the money is already there.
I don't know if the money is already there or not. I don't know.
Thank you.
Supervisor Binder.
I know I talked to you a couple months ago about the parking lot maintenance. We allocated $50,000 last year for parking lot maintenance. What have you done to date so far on the maintenance of the parking lots?
We've repaired a failed section of parking lot at the Parkview Health Center by their loading dock that needed to be repaired. And we do intend to crack fill the courthouse parking lot, the administration parking lot, to try to, I think between all those three projects, that'll probably use up most of the funds that are there, if not all of them.
Do you feel you got enough money in that fund to catch up? I mean, I was out at the airport the other day, you can't even see the stalls where to park. I mean, every parking lot you look at in Winnebago County, the Coughlin Center hasn't been crack filled in years, hasn't been seal coated, you can hardly see the stalls. How long do you think it's gonna take you to catch up on these parking lots at the rate of $50,000 per year?
We will never catch up at $50,000 a year. The needs are far in excess.
What would you think an adequate number, say in the next 4 to 5 years, to basically get the parking lots up to standard where you could maintain them?
If I had to say, if we were more in the $100,000 range, that would fund a lot more of the maintenance needs that are out currently exist. We could start to gain ground on our maintenance as long as we keep up a regular program of replacing pavements that are beyond the point where maintenance is an effective activity.
One other question I have is you got the purchase in here for some of these glider trucks. What is the purpose of that?
The glider trucks, what that does is allows us to still utilize the engine that's in the existing unit and rebuild it so that we don't have to purchase the new emission-controlled engines that are so much more costly.
But isn't it kind of sad that Winnebago County doesn't want to comply with the emission standards? What you're actually doing is you're buying a complete drivetrain of a truck and you're taking an old engine prior to 2003, rebuilding it so you don't have to comply to the emission standards of 2017. I think it's pretty sad when Winnebago County doesn't want to comply with the standards for pollution that they have set today, and yet we expect private contractors that are much smaller, have lots smaller budgets than us, and they got to go out and buy a 2017 truck, and we're going to basically take and buy a new frame cab, and we're going to take an old engine out of a truck that's prior to 2003 so we can basically beat the emission standards. One other question I got on the janitor watchman, how is that position going to work when you upgrade them all to Class 1?
How is it going to work? We'll still have four operator ones still performing that duty within the department, but they'll all be operator ones. There will be no more janitor watchman positions.
And they'll stay in there till they bid to a different job, or how will that work?
They'll be there until, they are utilized in other work, it's a good opportunity for us to, evaluate their performance because typically that's the entry-level point in our department. So when they come in, it gives us an opportunity to evaluate their performance, and it will also, as an operator one, will also allow us to utilize them in some of the field activities to help in their training and development within the department.
But will those 4 people stay on that job until they actually get an outside job? Or I've heard rumors that every 6 months they were gonna be switched out. And what would their hours be that they work? Because they are also responsible for building maintenance. And right now, you just basically lost your superintendent that basically took care of building maintenance in the shop. So you don't have a superintendent that's basically really knows that much about the building maintenance. Because you just got somebody that got replaced. And now if you take these, basically what used to be watchmen, they would be there for 2 or 3 years. They actually knew what needed to be done, what air exchange units needed to be maintained. And all of a sudden you start switching these people out. Do you think then you're better off turning that building maintenance over to facilities because you're not going to have anybody there to coordinate it?
No, it's still better for us to have the watchman position because they do more than just building maintenance. They're out responding to issues on the highway at night, calls from the sheriff's office, things like that. But what you described is the issue we have. We're getting new employees in as janitor watchmen. Within 3 or 4 months, as operator one positions open up, they're moving out of those positions. So we're having a difficult time keeping people in those lower paid entry level positions as janitor watchmen. So it'll be much more efficient for us to hire them as everyone as an operator one as an entry level point, be able to allow us to utilize those positions more effectively within the department and all of our field operations rather than just doing building maintenance.
And then they'll be staying there till an actual operator one position opens up? Or is it they're going to work there for 6 months and then 4 new people are going to come down to their job?
What we're going to do is we're going to post the positions, and there may be individuals within the department that want to do that position. We're going to give them an opportunity to post into it if they want to or sign up for it. We're going to give them first priority. If we don't have enough people that sign up for it, then we're going to assign those positions based on the time that they've been within the department. So the newest employees in those positions first.
And they would remain there till an opening came, so they would be there, that would be their job. They wouldn't, I've heard rumors that in 6 months then you'll assign another 4 people to those jobs.
If there's, we want to work with the employees, so if there's some employees that are in those positions that want to do something else, we want to give people an opportunity to work with, because they'll all be operator ones, we want to give them an opportunity to work in other aspects of the department as well. So sure, that's a possibility.
What I've heard from some of your operator ones is they put their 18 months in as a janitor watchman. They did their time, and the new employees should do the same. And also, what would their hours be? I've heard rumors that 7 on, 7 off. What hours are they going to be required to work?
We're looking at a 12-hour shift, and right now we're looking at the difference between a 7 on, 7 off or a rotating 12-hour shift. And it seems like the rotating 12-hour shift, similar to what a paper mill you would typically see, would be more desirable amongst the staff in the departments because they're not on for so long at so many hours. So.
Also, what would you contribute the high turnover to? You lost basically a road supervisor and a shop supervisor in the last year. What do you contribute the high turnover to of your key staff in such a short period?
Salary.
I see that you have for the road supervisor, it's a 50-hour-a-week job, and if you would actually break that down, he'd be making $25 an hour. There's workers there that make more than he does for basically 2 operators. I don't know how we can expect a road supervisor to supervise basically 53 or whatever you have at the highway department and make less money than the person running a grader. Or, I think our pay is way too low for the quality of people that we want to basically get for those jobs. And basically last year we lost a highway commissioner. This year we lost a road supervisor and a shop supervisor. I mean, I don't know how a department can keep running when you take your key people and you offered it to one of the shop superintendent. He's an excellent mechanic. He was there for about 12 years. You offered him the job and you insulted him because you offered him such a low wage, he turned it down.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, is this budget related?
I would think wages is part of budget. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I thought wages is part of the budget.
No, I think he's, I have no problem with him.
That's all I have.
Supervisor Shirk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we've rejected the idea of temporary stoplights at CB and Oak Ridge, has the issue of rumble strips been considered?
We currently have rumble strips. There are rumble strips installed on Oak Ridge Road, warning motorists as they approach
But
the
not
stop
on
signs.
CB?
No, because CB is not a stop, you don't stop on CB. CB is the through highway.
Yeah, okay, I understand. I noticed that you pointed out we have 90% federal funding for a CB Oak Ridge, and that's a high priority project. But the roundabout at Secura is going to be built quicker. Is that funded strictly by county?
There's no county funds in the construction of that roundabout.
Secura's paying for it all?
Secura and the village, yes.
Thank you.
Supervisor Keller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've been having a lot of discussion about specific items. I'd like to ask a general question. In terms of our county roads, there's a thing called Pacer rating, 1 to 10. Do you have any idea where most of our roads are at in that Pacer rating?
Most of our roads are in the good range, 5s. You know, I would say the average rating would be a 5. We just have some highways that are starting to get below into that 4, lower 5 into the upper 4, lower 4 range. And those are projects that I'm working on right now to address in our CIP to keep up with that deterioration.
So those lower range ones, those would be the ones you would prioritize as high. You have to get to
Yes.
those before they get to 1.
Yes.
Okay. Do you track, on a general basis, accidents on county roads?
We don't track that
You don't track
currently,
it?
no.
Okay.
We have access to accident data through the TOPS lab in Madison.
Okay.
So if I wanted to get accident information, I can get it. It just takes a little while to get it from them.
Because you did a presentation a couple of meetings ago about different roads that you thought were unsafe and needed maybe reconstruction.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering if we would be tracking that, you could kind of tell which roads were getting more accidents and maybe beef up your ability to convince the board that we need to reconstruct some. That might be a good thing to do.
Sure, that certainly is a tool. However, when you do look at accidents, as you get into the metropolitan area, higher traffic volumes, even though the roadways may be safe, there's a lot of factors that go into what causes an accident. And obviously, when you get into higher volume highways in the urbanized area, your accident rates go up on your highways just because of the volume of traffic. So we need to look at or delve into, when we get that accident information, what are the causes of those accidents? And that's what we really need to look at.
And the same thing, only a little bit more specific, would be like winter traffic accidents due to
Right.
ice and snow.
Weather conditions, sure.
Weather conditions and how well we're maintaining the roads in the winter. I mean, is there certain roads where maybe you're seeing more accidents because you're not getting there as fast as you are other roads? And just something like that to kind of keep the people happy and keep them safe.
Well, we certainly try, but, again, in the winter, folks are required or taught to travel according to the conditions. So if we don't have a chance to get out there, if we're in a heavy storm and it's snowing a lot where it seems like we're not plowing, but it's just snowing faster than we can plow it off the road, people need to learn to slow down and drive according to conditions.
Do you track your costs per mile of highway maintenance costs? Or per some unit, would ever make sense?
We certainly could. Yeah, we can determine what that cost per mile is for maintenance. I don't know that we have that information currently.
Because if you did, you got all these people to manage and all your costs, and it'd be kind of nice if you were trying to reduce that cost over a year, or maybe improve it at the same cost.
Sure.
Some kind of tracking mechanism.
Sure.
Would be interesting to see. And then my last question is, I don't know if you can answer here, is all these questions I just asked about county roads, what is your opinion about the local roads, the town roads?
The condition of them?
Yeah, and safety and et cetera.
Well,
He's going to be explaining that next on page 307. I would like him to explain county road maintenance.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay, county road maintenance, that is the portion of our budget that deals with we have our highway winter and general maintenance accounts. Those are the two main accounts within the county road maintenance. We purchase our materials through this account, and we receive our transportation aids through this account. One thing I would like to point out before I get too far is we have $2 million listed in our transportation aids, and to remember, these are just estimates. I'm trying to estimate what our revenues and expenses are for the year. These numbers change over the year depending on the amount or amount of work we do for other municipalities, townships, it's the state. So these numbers change. So we try to estimate as close as we can, but I did find out that we will be getting this year, which is good news, an additional $116,000 in transportation aids. So that's going to go a long way to help us maintain our highway system.
Then do all the townships in Winnebago County use our county road maintenance?
No. We have about half of the towns roughly that utilize the highway department for their maintenance needs, and that's something that I would sure like to increase that to do more for the towns. But as we do more work for the towns, we have to staff and equip our department to handle that additional work as well. So we have to try to, work that carefully so that we are adequately staffed and equipped to do that.
Do you have any more?
Yeah, I don't think I got an answer on my last question. What is your opinion on the condition of the town roads in the county?
The town roads, I would say they're average. Every town is a little different, but then again, the towns are struggling with funding too to try to maintain their system. So it really wouldn't be fair to me to really comment on the condition of their roads. But I would say in general, fair, I would say would be the condition of towns.
So I think you said you do about half of the towns, so the other half are contracting to private contractors?
Roughly, yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Supervisor Haig?
Quick follow-up question on the glider double wing with insert 320,000. What is the cost of a completely new vehicle?
That will add roughly, if I'm going off of memory, it would add roughly $30,000 to $40,000 more per unit.
And what is the cost to rebuild the motor and transmission of the older vehicle and install it into the new chassis?
I don't have that number on top of my head. I don't know.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing there are no more questions, we'll break for lunch and reconvene at 1 o'clock.
Pardon? Somebody give an explanation why we're going.
The Winnebago County Board is currently in a break. For a schedule of all GovTV programming, visit our website at oshkoshmedia.org. This is GovTV, opening accessibility and understanding of local government, helping you to be informed and involved. Also streaming live and on demand at oshkoshmedia.org and radio